So I probably won't turn my camera on. I'm actually like not at home. I'm at like a
Okay,
relative's place. I'm like
no
stuff.
problem. That's the first thing people heard.
Uh,
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Stormkeep Live. We have been away for a little while, but we are back to talk about a number of topics today. My name is Paul. Who else do we have joining us on the panel today?
Hey guys, it's Margonk.
What's up, y'all? It's David.
Gonna have to turn Mergonk up here for once.
Hey guys, it's John.
And Jack.
It's 3+ Jack.
Do
Okay.
you roll with everything you do, Jack?
Yeah, all the time. And I fail it 50% of the time. You know how that works.
That sounds like a 3-up roll, yeah.
Yeah, nice.
So let's talk about not the state of the game. Let's talk about the channel update first, right? We could jump into that because I want to spend more time talking about the 4th edition stuff and the Stormcast Battletome. And I have been having weird lag problems all day, and I'm the host of this call, so if I start lagging out, the whole stream shuts down, unfortunately. So we're gonna try to make sure we get as much covered before something happens. I don't know. I'm not a tech guy, so I've been trying to figure this out all day, and I have achieved very little on that front. So let's talk about the Stormkeep channel. Where have we been at? What have we been doing? I've been busy. I had a kid over the summer, so I've just pretty much been doing that. And the new World of Warcraft expansion is really, really good. I've been having a lot of fun playing that with a baby sitting on my chest. Turns out you can do a lot of stuff in that scenario. So I haven't had much time to paint or play, but I've still been following Age of Sigmar very closely. Obviously, if you guys are on the Discord server, you know how much time I spend on there talking about the game. What have you guys been up to? Have you been going to tournaments? Have you getting a lot of games in?
My wife is about to have a kid.
Yes, congratulations. When is that? When is a son, right?
Yeah, son. Yeah, about end of December, so early January. So my birthday gift to myself might be my son coming.
Nice.
Sweet. It's wholesome.
That's great.
I have been playing a lot of 4th edition.
Good.
Nice.
Have you been winning a lot of 4th edition?
Yeah, I've been to 4 GTs and 3 RTTs. And I've gone 4-1 with most of my Stormcast lists. I had a 3-2, but both games that I lost, it was very, very close against very good players.
Nice. Yeah, you guys have a pretty competitive scene out where you're at.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
How about you, John? What do you
Yeah, I've
been
been
up to?
playing quite a bit as well. Not as much lately in the last month or so, but I have a GT coming up in a few weeks. I've done some little RTTs. Did a local league at X Planet. I went down to Nova, which was great. So that was like an early GT, or actually, not early, but 3 months in, I guess, to the index. And that was good. I got 25th, I think, something like that.
Nice.
It was definitely the highest Stormcast. Couple little mistakes made in there, but yeah, it played a lot more confidently, I'd say, than other GTs I've gone to in the past. So I think that was, in my opinion, the army's been feeling more consistent than it used to. It's not, I don't think it's top 5 quite yet, but it's definitely top 10, and I've been enjoying it a lot. It feels better than it was before.
Yeah,
Okay.
for sure.
Okay. That's fair. There's a lot of stuff about the previous edition that was not fun to deal with. Last edition Stormcast was an army where if you had a specific build with a specific play style, you would have fun with it. But if you're just kind of putting stuff together that you like, I guess that's still true now, right? Like you can't just use any units and have a very good time with Stormcast. It's very much a specific unit, specific combination kind of army.
Yeah, it's just a bit. It feels like you can make a mistake or two and still have enough to win.
Mhm.
Whereas I felt in third edition that was not the case. If you made a mistake with Stormcast, you
Game
probably
over.
weren't winning that game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If all of your
Agreed.
threat ranges weren't immaculate every turn and planning for a double, yeah, it was over. It was tough to play.
Well, just if you had any below average rolls, even it could cost you the game.
Yeah, that was definitely the case. I like the safety blanket of having Heaven Sent. Okay, all right, we'll save all that for the when we talk about the Stormcast book.
But yeah, save that for the review.
Okay. All right. So the channel, what we haven't really done much since we released the index review, which I'm really surprised that we got that finished, frankly, with everything that's been going on. I'm really glad we did, because it turned out to be relevant for a lot longer than I thought it would be. I thought maybe like we'd put out the index review and then like a week later the Battletome would come out. Surprise, it took them 8 weeks or something like that. So pretty happy that stayed relevant for long, and it also is going to stay relevant for even longer because the Battletome is not that much of a change. Aside from like last minute point changes, it's pretty much the same as the index. You know, like the units don't really do anything different. And since that index review came out, we haven't really done much. But I want to change that. I want to get back into the swing of things. I want to get back into just making videos like we used to, and having a good time. Because Age of Sigmar is still a fun game, even though I'm about to have a lot of criticisms of it in this live stream. I think it's still a fun game at its core, and it's still worth playing for sure. So, in terms of stuff for the channel, painting contests, we had our sponsor, Leighton Gaming, that finished, and we are looking at getting a new sponsor. So I'm not entirely certain yet what that's going to look like, what the prize pool is going to be, when it's going to happen, but we're working on it, and we will have painting contests at some point, even if we need to, fund it ourselves. We will get that done. List building contest, we haven't done one of those in a while because we didn't want to do one for the indexes, since the index was temporary. Now the Battletome's out, we definitely want to start doing a list building contest again, so look forward to that in November. We're going to start collecting lists and talking about lists for our next list building video. Other video ideas, Lords of the Storm, of course, is our list building stuff. I want to do a video specifically about the Stormreach portal. This was suggested on the Discord, and I think it's a great idea. Most Stormcast players have never used a piece of terrain on their side of the table. Like, maybe Murgonk did because he played in 2nd edition, and we had that like neutral faction terrain that cost 100 points that gave you a command point sometimes. But nobody remembers that.
What?
I tried it. The
What
Penumbral
is
engine.
that?
The Penumbral engine gave you a CP sometimes. Other times it did mortal wounds to you. I tried it. It was pretty ass. It's not worth it.
What?
Yes.
Where is that thing now?
It's in
just not a
Forbidden
thing?
Power. You can go buy it. It's
Okay.
it was a neutral terrain piece that cost 100 points. It was so strange.
Oh, weird.
It's the only terrain that's ever cost points, as far as I know. Yeah. Oh, the next.
But was it for all order or something, or was it any army?
I think it was just order. That sounds right,
That's
but
so
now
weird.
you got me questioning it, because I remember there was like, it was made by Techless.
No, it was only order because it was
Was it?
made by Techless, and Techless and Sigmar made it to like hide stuff from.
Yeah,
I can't remember who.
Techless
from
made, like,
from the realms.
it was like an orb of knowledge that you could tap into to get all the knowledge in the universe. And Sigmar was like,
Sweet.
I'm going to use this to hide my treasures underground.
Yeah. Also hide where Catacross is imprisoned.
Yes,
Basically.
that was
That's what happened. Like, because Nighthaunt, I think, like destroyed a city where there was a Penumbral engine, and they broke Catacross free after gaining the knowledge from that engine.
Yes. Well, technically they broke.
Yeah, it was Lethis, right?
Yeah, and there was that weird story where what's her face? The Nighthaunt chick. What's her name?
Oh,
Oleander.
Oleander.
Yeah. She was losing a fight against Celestin Prime, and then she whipped a magic hourglass at him and just won instantly. Which is like, okay, cool.
What?
Yes.
Hilarious.
All this and more in the upcoming lore series. I swear to God, the story of Age of Sigmar is so bizarre. Okay, so
I've never read any of that stuff. It's kind of crazy.
just wait till you.
I'm a
About
big
that guy.
40k Horus Heresy.
Wait for the
fan,
Marathi
but
video.
Never read any of this stuff.
The Marathi
Yeah,
video
okay.
is going to be wild. Okay,
Nice.
so yeah, most players have never used terrain, so we want to do a video showing like, here's how you actually use it. This is what you're able to do with it, and then go into like tips and tricks of using it to like block a line of sight, create charge lanes, trying to position it to make sure you don't accidentally give your opponent a free charge into it because it's terrain. You can charge terrain. You can walk into combat with it. Yeah, so there's going to be a video focusing on that. Forever we've wanted to do a video on how movement wins games. At the end of third edition, we had this idea of putting this video together. The little tips and tricks that you could do, like setting up for a riposte or like denying people moving into like combat ranges, basically what it's called now. All that stuff. And then we thought, well, we'll wait for fourth edition. We'll see how the movement rules change because we know it's going to be a pretty big change. So we want to get back to making that video now that we've had time to play it. Index review series. We not gonna say we, because I totally dropped the ball on this. I had a baby, so cut me some slack. But also the indexes just aren't very interesting to like as a puzzle to solve. Everybody really solved them really quick. And the fun part of doing like a Battletome review is being in that first like 4-week window where you can give all your takes and then you can get to see if they're right or not, you know, which is super fun. And we're usually pretty good on that, which is you know, good track record. But for the indexes, it's kind of like everybody's just spamming the most efficient unit. You know, like crunch the numbers, crunch the stats, find the most effective health, find the most damage, and just bring as much of that as you can. Like that's a really glib version of it, but that's more or less what's happening, right? Like Seraphon are spamming Aggrodon, Stormcast is spamming Cavalry, Nighthaunt is spamming everything because they're undertuned. Or overtuned, I guess. Lumineth were spamming Dawn Riders and Wind Rider, but like that's pretty much what it turned into, which isn't. It's not super interesting. Like there's not the breadth of combos.
I would say that's always been Age of Sigmar. I think what had happened instead is the value of singular units has gone down massively. Like it's not like spam was always a problem in Age of Sigmar, spamming the most efficient thing or bringing the most efficient thing of something. I mean, Gavin Gregar's LVO wins are all based on spamming Steam Tanks, spamming Storm Drakes, and like, you know. But it's more like the value of singular things has gone way, way down. Like things like 2 Fulminators, things like just 3 Vanguard, things like just 5 Dawn Riders. I think like people won't do that stuff anymore. It's like if you're taking anything, you are planning to reinforce it. Only like the gold digging, fast moving, like secondary objective takers are the only things you're planning on taking singular things of. But mostly it'll be reinforced stuff that you'll see on the board.
I think there's another reason for that. It's not just efficiency. It's the way regiments are constructed. You know, there's no upside to having more drops, just downside. So the game is encouraging you to have as few drops as possible. So I remember when we were talking about the regiments at first, you were like, oh, think of these armies like Soulblight that have to bring 5 or 6 heroes. There are going to be 5 or 6 drops because they want all these layered buffs on their skeletons. What ended up happening, though, is everyone's like, oh, okay, I guess I'll just take the 2 best heroes in my army, stuff as many reinforced units into those 2 regiments as possible, and that's my list, because if I go 3 drops, I'll get outdropped and then doubled and lose the game.
Right.
And that's what's happening, right? Like, I'm not crazy. I know I haven't been playing that much the last couple months, but that's the gist of what I hear is happening.
Yeah. The regiment system is definitely causing problems. Oh, Jack, go ahead.
No, I didn't want to overtalk over you, Morgan, but
no, please.
By and large, yeah, I agree with you, Paul. I do think that there are edge cases. We are seeing some deviations from the like cram everything into 2 regiments, but by and large, yeah, that's become kind of the stock standard: 2 to 3 regiments, and then concentrate that power in whatever your most effective units are. It's a very Death Star style meta right now.
I just wish they balanced.
Yeah,
I just wish they balanced the. Yes, I do miss Warlord a lot. I just wish they balanced the like hero to things you could take, and like I understand when they did that. I think they did a Warcom article on it like way back. That was like we're trying to make like heroes that take thematic stuff with them. And then that idea, I don't think ever really made it too much. Like some armies felt that, but then other armies didn't. Like I feel like Death Army is just you take whatever. You take a hero, you get whatever. But then like armies like us, like we're like scraping by trying to fit things into regiments. You know, like I almost rather have them just do like 1 hero of whatever, and then like 4, like units or 3 units how they did, and just take away the like conditions, because I just don't think I think there's just too many armies and too many heroes to balance it all. Like it just seems like it's just way too much, and it's too much load on them.
Okay, sorry. Just hold this for a second. We're almost done with the channel update. I have so much I want to add to that. Oh man, so much. Okay, So yeah, the index review series, I don't think we're going to go forward with it. Just because the timing's kind of passed. People have already solved all this stuff. They're a lot of work, and I think I'd rather save that work for Battletomes as they come out. It's also something for us to get excited about, rather than next April be like, oh, let's go back and look at the Seraphon index and do a deep, like, is that going to be exciting? It's like, no, let's just wait and see what Battletomes come out. I feel like we'll be more excited to make more stuff that way, because this is purely off passion, right? Like we're not making anything off this. So I think we're going to drop the index review series. I think so. Oh, no, don't start corn posting in the chat, please. Don't get me started. The lore series, I am starting to write some scripts. I want to do a video about the Stormcast military structure, talking about the difference between the warrior chamber, the exemplar chamber, and the harbinger chamber, and the difference between a chamber and a conclave, the difference between a conclave and a storm host. Nobody knows what a strike chamber is. Nobody knows where Aether Wings fit into the whole hierarchy, or Storm Drakes, are they part of it or not? All these questions. I want to make a somewhat serious, somewhat funny kind of video about that. I also am fascinated by the Age of Myth. That, like, you see all this great art from the Age of Myth with, like, giant monsters and gods battling it out and, like, volcanoes erupting. And, like, it's just, I love that stuff. So I kind of want to, I feel like a lot of people don't know what the Age of Myth is. They see the Age of Sigmar, but they don't realize that it's like it precedes the Age of Myth, which was then preceded by the Age of Chaos, and then now we're in the Age of Sigmar. Like, the story is actually really, really, it's a large weave, and they're kind of filling in the pieces as we go. So I want to start fleshing that out for you guys. I think it's cool. It's like, if you like Greek stories and tragedies and gods and monsters battling, I think this video will be fun for you guys.
And like Old World falls in there somewhere. How does that work?
So the Old World exploded because it was a bunch of winds of magic that were been constrained into a single point, basically. And then at the end of the Old World, rather than let chaos, I forget how this goes. Like, I haven't read the Old World in a while. Just remember that Manfred ruined everything. He's a complete douchebag, and everything could have been better had Manfred not been a giant douche. And then the world exploded, and all the magic in the world turned into an infinite cosmos, which is still as big as it is now. But over time, the winds kind of settled around each other. So, like, the wind of Akshi kind of settled around more of Akshi. So you ended up getting, like, big clusters of each element. So you have, like, an Olgu cluster and a Hish cluster. And over time, that magic started to settle and coalesce into the realms that we know today. And while that was happening, Sigmar was flying through space, technically dead, clinging on to the core of the world because he had ascended to godhood in his final battle. I think that's right. I don't know the specifics of that, but he did ascend to godhood at some point. And
he ascended to godhood in the prehistory of the Old World, and and the incarnates of the various winds of magic had basically become like living gods channeled into mortals.
No, like, yes, but okay. They did become gods effectively in the Old World, but then they all died. They're all dead except for Sigmar, who clung to he was dead too, actually, and he clung to the core of the Old World, which is called Malice, Mallus, not Malice, the old god, or the chaos god.
Okay.
And he's flying through space, and he's like, I don't know, he's sad or something, even though he's dead. And Dracothian, this zodiac beast, this zodiac god beast, which is like transcendent being above even the chaos elemental gods, because it can exist without a realm to exist in. I don't know. Dracothian senses how sad Sigmar is that he died or something, and he just like breathes him back to life. And Sigmar's like, yo, we're best friends now. Let's go on a crusade and, explore these realms that have coalesced. And while Sigmar's exploring the realms, he finds all the other incarnates. But they're not really the incarnates. They're like creations of the realms that just have all the memories of the incarnates, because Nagash had so much death wind magic that he became part of the Wind of Death. So when Olgu started to reform... Shaiish. When Shaiish started to reform, it just created Nagash or something. I got to double check this stuff. But it's like... So it's hilarious because it describes how he meets each god, and they're all in like a weird way. Like, he found Nagash under an urn. Nagash was trapped underneath an urn, a big urn, a small urn, I don't know, but he's trapped under an urn, and he frees him. And instead of like fighting his mortal enemy who caused the end of the old world, he's like, hey, let's team up. You've got skeletons. They're really good at building things forever with no labor. You build me civilization and we'll thwart the chaos gods. We'll do it right this time. And he just goes around and he finds all the gods like this. Like Grimnir, Grungni and Grimnir were trapped on top of a mountain, and they will never ever speak of why they were trapped up there, except that it's very shameful. And Sigmar freed them, and then they would both have a life debt to him, which is why Grungni is now constantly making new Stormcast for Sigmar, because he owes him this debt, and he will just never stop making Stormcast ever. And Grimnir went ahead and he was like, no, I don't want a life debt. I don't want to be working for you forever. Give me something heroic to do. I'm gonna go and do it, and then we're square. So Sigmar's like, okay, you know that like big lizard, the concept of fire, the very like manifestation of the idea of heat, go kill that thing for reasons. So Grimnir does, and then they die, and then they merge together. They're like godly powers merge together, and that's where the Fire Slayers and also the realm of Akshi come from. Their death created Akshi. It's like Sigmar lore is so cool. It's so stupid, but so cool.
I
Well,
didn't know
covered
there's
the
so
whole
much
lore
of it.
series. I don't know why.
We just
Yeah,
did
the
it.
lore series. Yeah, we just did it.
Yeah.
So, you know.
We'll just clip that.
Lore series part 1 done. You guys got it.
Yeah, so hopefully people find that kind of rambling interesting, and I'm gonna add like images and everything, and it should be fun. Something different to do on the channel when we don't have to get like everyone together and talk about.
We might get
Dice.
sued by GW because they do lore master videos for Warhammer Weekly now, or Warhammer Plus. Sorry.
We're gonna make our own with blackjack and hookers. There we go.
It'll be fine.
It'll be.
So who else has been playing?
I have not been.
I was, but I had some
Yeah.
family issues come up. But
I've been
I
playing.
have some stuff.
I've been at least trying to get at least 1 or 2 games in a week still with like work and stuff. But yeah, it feels like, I don't know. I play, just competitively, which I assume you guys do too. So it's like when you play against a certain army, you already know what they're gonna bring. It's like we might as well swap armies and just play each other because we'll probably have more enjoyment at that point.
Yeah, a lot of armies don't have a lot of choices, huh? Like, I thought Stormcast internal balance was bad. We went from, how many good archetypes did we have last edition? Like a dozen, probably, over time, over the whole edition. Every army is like 1 or 2 play styles. It's really crazy.
Yeah, it seems pretty tight, and it seems like it's actually tightening down now that the General's Regiment isn't sort of an issue to stack anymore, and I'm seeing a lot of 1-drops coming through, which is just like every unit's reinforced, 1 big hero.
Yeah,
and
a lot of the
you're just smashing face.
Yeah, the more expression-based lists, the flavor of AOS was because Battle Regiment could be done without sacrificing on that flavor. With Battle Regiment no longer being a thing and Warlord no longer being a thing, any list that requires the expression of more than like 2 heroes or 3 heroes is dead. Like, you will never see the Namardi heavy lists that became popular slightly for a moment in 3rd edition. You will never see stuff like, go wide Iron Jaws list. I know Rob Mulshine is always trying fun stuff. Like, he's a great guy and a great player, but in general, I mean,
he's trying to squeeze blood from that stone. Yeah, I appreciate his efforts. Like, I'm glad people out there are still experimenting, because it's I hope it creates good feedback, and I hope they can release an update in the summer in the General's Handbook that's just going to really build off the foundation, because I think 4th edition is a good edition. It's like a cleaned up version of 3rd, where the armies are a little less interesting right now, let's say, but the actual core rules are way better. They're cleaner. You know when to use things. There's almost no arguing about rules except for manifestations.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's great. I love that. Manifestations are so bad. The rules are so bad. Just make them units. Why can't they be units?
They are units sometimes.
No, they are treated as units, which is not the same as being a unit. God, it's so silly. Yeah, the regiment thing, It just got like a short list of stuff we want to talk about here. We don't have to go through it in order or anything. I want to talk about regiments because you guys have got me on this topic.
Yeah, let's do it.
They added regiments because they want there to be skill expression in list building, right? There has to be some kind of skill expression. Otherwise, people would just bring random stuff in it. Like, well, or you'd have preset stuff, which isn't fun. You don't want to have a game where, oh, I'm playing this regiment, which is like these 5 units. Like, people want to actually put things together. They want that to be part of the game, and they should because it's fun.
Yes.
And so what they decided on was, okay, we're going to try to make it more thematic. We're going to have, like, it doesn't make sense if you have a wind mage bring a bunch of earth temple guys into battle. So we are going to tie it so that if you want to bring the wind temple guys, you have to bring the wind mage, or you have to bring, you know, the lord of the faction, Teclis, or Light of Eltharion for some reason, which I don't really understand, but, you know, whatever. I'm sure there's a narrative reason that I don't get. That sounds cool on paper, right? You want to bring Vanguard, bring a Vanguard hero. You want to bring Extremist, bring an Extremist hero, right? I think where it all starts to fall apart, there's 2 things. First off, drops are tied to deployment or to initiative, right? And when there's no incentive to ever have more drops, there's no Warlord Battalion, like what you guys are saying, you miss the Warlord Battalion. I miss it too, because it was something that's not the regular, that's not the default. Right? I don't care what it is. There's just a default now. There's no reason to go over 3 drops. You're just hurting yourself. And then
War Master.
Yeah, forcing your general choice is just, again, like, narratively cool, right? Why would anyone take orders from Marathi?
What?
Right?
Yeah, but what I'm sort of suggesting is more like you can't, because the way you described it, that brings personality and makes it interesting is like, I want to bring Vanguard, I have to bring a Vanguard hero. But instead, everyone's just like, well, why don't I just bring a War Master who's also awesome and I can bring whatever I want in this regiment? That's what people are defaulting to, way more than bringing these thematic regiments, which I think is sort of what they were trying to do.
Yeah, unless they're super efficient or super good in their own way, right? Like the Zephyros is just a good hero. She teleports around, she scores you battle tactics, she's very cheap. So it turns out what people are going to do is they're not going to build thematic lists. They're still going to take the best units and the best combinations, and then they'll just find ways to make it as efficient as possible, right? They'll find those War Master heroes. Or you're playing an army like, you know, Soulblight or Cruel Boys, where it's like, it doesn't matter what hero I take because they all bring every unit. Like, who cares, right? And that's another problem with this whole system, is that it feels like some armies just get unnecessarily taxed. Like, they put a lot of thought into which hero each Stormcast hero can take, and then they put no thought into which heroes Cruel Boys heroes can take, or which units, right? It's just a tax on some armies. Lumineth, Stormcast, Seraphon, they suffer a lot, and then other armies just, take whatever in whatever combination. You're a Fire Slayer? Cool. Just take anything. Doesn't matter. I think another problem
that's also because regiments, like, if a unit roster has like 6 units, like, what are they going to do?
Yeah, okay, so this is another big problem, which could be solved. I'm not saying any of these problems are, like, you know, bad to the point where the edition's ruined. They can solve these. This is fixable because they have this modular rule set. One of the problems is the number of units you bring with heroes. Why is it fixed to 3 and then +1 for general? Why can Bastion bring as many units as a Knight and Cantor? You know, if they want to go thematic, they should have some heroes better at leading and capable of bringing more troops with them, or have some restrictions on reinforced units or something. You know, like maybe some heroes can bring units, but they can't bring them reinforced. Like a War Master can bring anything, but maybe they can't bring a reinforced version of it or something. Like, if they're going to add these kinds of things into the list building, it could get a lot more interesting. But right now, it's really just a matter of efficiency. Pick the best units, pick the heroes that can bring those units, which are also probably good, right? And that's your list. 7 units total, 2 heroes.
Yeah, and again, we're seeing that, like, there was this moment where I think they even said, like, oh, we want to get rid of, like, the race to the bottom of the 1 drop kind of thing. Like, I swear they said that in one of the interviews. But then you know, you get this situation where now they've changed the rules in General's Handbook, where, like, the entourage isn't sort of everyone in the general's regiment. It's only the person that you pick for the buff. And then all of a sudden it's like, it's not as big of a deal anymore to throw a bunch of stuff into that one drop, right? And we're seeing that now. Just 6 months in, we're back to the one drop game already.
Yeah, yeah. There was a time where people were going 3 and 4 drop because
Yeah.
priority target was so good, and it was
Right.
that was like a
Yeah.
natural counter. And it seems like they've just undone that, and now everybody's like going as
Just
few
let it
drops as
go.
possible. Yeah, I didn't see that coming. Honestly, I did not see that as a third order effect of nerfing priority target, which did need to be nerfed. Maybe not as much as they did, but it was definitely like the problem's covering fire, right? The problem is covering fire with priority target. That's the
Right.
problem.
That was the combination. Yeah.
And just
Or
limit
just
it.
don't have it in shooting.
That was
Don't have it-
originally
just have it in combat.
my recommendation was to just change priority targets to be melee only, and I feel like that would have solved the issue.
Yeah. It's the fact that that's really the only list building decision we have to make right now is kind of. I know they wanted a simple first season because it's a new edition and the indexes, but I feel like the game is solved for the most part. Like people solved it a month or two ago, and it's kind of the next 8 months is going to be. It's just going to be increasingly more boring as time goes on, and I think that's a shame. And then the next season stuff in summer has to be big. Like whatever they do with the General's Handbook next year has to be a significant change because you can't play 2 years of 4th edition Index Hammer. Like this is not interesting enough to keep it going. Maybe that's just my opinion though. I don't want to say I'm too negative about the game, but I feel like if I had to play this version of the game for another year and a half, I think I'd rather play another game.
I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's a lot of fun. I think they're updating things really quickly.
That's great.
But it's going to see how quick they are with the books and stuff, and how much things. As long as there's some fresh changes, sort of shared around. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, let's talk about how quickly they've changed stuff because that's something they did well in 3rd edition for the most part. It kind of by the end it kind of petered off because they new edition was coming, right? But that was something they were good at in 3rd edition. Consistent rule updates. They released a bunch of ridiculously overpowered books, and they just kept clawing them back over and over, kept making changes, and eventually it got back to a good spot. And it's good to see that in 4th edition they're kind of taking a similar approach of making iterative changes on these armies. I think they probably could have gone farther with the Nighthaunt and Lumineth nerfs, right? They were a little too light-handed, but they are consistently making more changes. Like they make a little tweak, wait to see what happens, make a little tweak. If they're doing these monthly updates, I'm on board for that. As somebody who has a full collection, I'm not going out and buying more stuff. I'm not worried that my list is going to be invalid. I'm not worried that, like, if I was somebody who just got into the game and bought a bunch of Huracan wind chargers because they were so cool and I wanted to play that, like that person's really struggling right now because that's
Nah, you deserve it. You know who you are. You deserve it.
Yeah, you want a GT, it's fine.
Yeah, they've been very responsive, so that's great. It reminds me of the change and I know Jack, you're going to be upset about this, but it reminds me of the change to Thunderbolt Volley last edition, where it wasn't good for Stormcast, but it was good for the game. Like it wasn't fun to play against reinforced Thunderbolt Volley at all. Nobody liked that. That was just a miserable experience. So I'm glad they're looking for things that are not fun to play against. And then identifying them and then making changes like what they did with Wind Riders. I think that's good stuff. So I'm happy about that.
I think, Paul, you said this earlier. I was actually thinking about this external balance wise. I know they like to keep 45 to 55, but I would really like it if they would just shrink it a little bit. Like
yeah.
I think I think you said like a 45% win army plays against a 55% win army, and it's not balanced.
No, not at all.
It's like not even close.
Yeah. It's not a fun game, I would think, if you're trying to play as like a competitive match. It's not going to be very fun. There's the disparity between a 45 and let's say even a 60 army, because 60 armies do exist quite frequently in this game. They very rarely let armies sit very, very bad, but they will let armies sit at the top and then slowly nerf them over time, like what we're seeing with Nighthaunt and Lumineth. So we could have another 6 months of those two armies being at the top. It could happen. And if you're playing, Gargants into Nighthaunt or Lumineth right now. If you're playing Fire Slayers or Karajon's not that bad, but I can't imagine they're having a lot of fun into Nighthaunt swarming all over them and charging in combat. It's just, yeah, I would like it if they could get it to a 48 to 52 range rather than 45 to 55. That's a lot more work. I don't think they're going to do it, and I think we have to just settle for 45 to 55. I think it's as good as we're going to get.
I definitely think we're asking for probably too much for them, but I just you can see the disparity, right? Like look at the 45% armies right now, and then look at 55% armies, and 8 out of 10 times you know who's winning that game.
Yeah, especially because the stronger players will tend to play the stronger armies. Not always, right? There's always players playing the weakest armies, having a great time. No matter how bad some armies get, they always have that one player, like Caleb, who's just going to take it and run with it. And it turns out the army was overpowered all along. It just took a player like Caleb to show everyone. People were really down on Tzeentch at the start of this edition, but
I don't understand why. They're really good.
Yeah, that's what I felt too.
People don't gravitate towards control naturally. It's always a very spike thing.
It's not
the
obvious.
Same in Magic, right?
It's not obvious how good control's going to be.
You're not going to see Timmies and Johnnies in Magic the Gathering pick up a random blue-black Esper control deck.
Yeah,
it's always going to be the people who are seriously experienced and know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
If a rules writer plays your army, you are in a good spot. That's a good gamble.
Well, it's a great time to be Lumineth and Tzeentch.
True.
They're next.
And Flesh Eater Court soon, hopefully, because that's what the designer is painting up, I think, in the last interview that they did.
Well, maybe I'll hold on to my Flesh Eaters a bit longer then. I was thinking about selling them, but we'll see.
They had barely any time in the limelight.
3rd edition was so good for them. They were so fun to play.
Yeah, and had that one moment.
And they're just so not fun to play now. I've heard new zombie dragons are coming, so that's probably going to be with the Flesh Eater book. We'll see. Okay, what else is good about 4th edition before we talk about something else that's bad? What else are you guys liking about 4th edition?
These models have been exceptional.
The what has? Sorry?
The models.
Oh,
they're putting out I know we clown on on Big Bird and Tyrannus and Azeros, but we have to admit those models are actually pretty damn good. They're pretty damn good. I would put those on my shelf.
One day
that's all
they'll get their rules.
All they'll see. I mean, Erden is only witnessing the shelf. The Lord Vigilant on Morgriff is shelf guardian.
Who's gonna protect my 10K of Stormcast? Come on, somebody.
But it's you think about it. It's Vanguard Paladins have taken 7 years to be playable. So,
yeah.
We only have to wait maybe 2 for this stuff to become playable. So
sometimes things are never playable. Never really good enough to be playable. Night Quester is an example. Toralon, unfortunately, has never really gotten there. I always try to make it work, and in fact, I'm still going to give it a C tier in our next tier list.
I think it's playable now, which is a pity because it's leaving in 6 months. But it is playable. I don't think
that's a hard model to find secondhand.
Well, no, and all the prices secondhand are $300 now. So
no, I couldn't find it. I just gave up.
Good luck with that. Good luck with that.
It's the right time to get rid of my old Stormcast.
If you sell it for retail price that you bought it, full GW retail price, somebody will buy it. People are buying it.
Oh yeah, you can sell it. It's painted and stuff too. You can sell it for quite a lot, probably.
Yeah, probably. Okay.
Don't worry, some shareholder will get upset in 3 months, and then they'll be like, "Please cut 100 points off Erden and
still wouldn't make it playable.
I mean, can you imagine if they gave the Lord Vigilant on Morgriff the what is it that cavalry hero from Cruel Boys who just kept going down every battle scroll until he was 110 points.
It became the best screen in the game.
Yeah, it can't. No, every Cruel Boys list I know took 3 of them because you could save stack the hell out of them and they could tie up Marathi for the whole game.
Yeah.
By themselves.
Yeah, finest hour on a screen. How great is that? Oh, sweet. Okay, so we said some good things about 4th edition. Back to criticizing it. External balance is really bad. It's gotten better. They've been making good changes, but they really should have made bigger changes sooner. It should have been day 1 balance patch for manifestations. and Lumineth and Nighthaunt. Like within a week, it should have been out. People just knew this stuff immediately, and it's still a problem, right? Like I don't know if they're ever going to balance free manifestations. I feel like it's a feature of the edition, and they can't take it away, and it just is not going to be fun. They have to come up with something really different if they want to make free manifestations fun, like regiments that give you spell ignores against manifestations and unbinding and all this stuff. Like they're gonna have to really jump through a lot of hoops to make this stuff worthwhile.
They doubled down really hard on manifestations because you mean we could tell how passionate they really wanted this thing, like this rule set to be in the game, and that's fine. But like now they have to do all this backtracking because they just like I'm not sure they didn't play test it enough or they just didn't care. It took what one game to figure out to like if I just drop 4 of these on the board, it's an extra it's an extra 500 points to my army. Like it didn't
Every
take a rocket
turn.
science. Like it didn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. So I'm not sure what they're gonna do, but we gotta give them credit for at least trying to backtrack and trying to fix things.
Yeah, they're definitely making the right changes. I wish they were a little bit heavier handed on Nighthaunt and Lumineth, but because like who knows when they're gonna get a Battletome, right? This is, but they're
I think
updating
Lumineth's
rules.
fine.
Like
I think
how
Lumineth's fine. I think yeah.
how
I
crazy
think,
is it
I
that
think
they're?
that,
Go ahead.
yeah, it's just, I think like because they're doing monthly FAQs, I think incremental changes are fine. Like I put myself in the shoes of like a Lumineth or Nighthaunt player. I would not want a Stormdrake level nerf that my units never recover from.
Right.
Like think of everything that happened to our
Yes.
tome between the time that it came out and like there was one
And
nerf
actually
before the
playing
tome
it?
was even out. There were 2 nerfs
Yeah.
right after. And then those nerfs stayed there for a year until people figured out that those nerfs made the book trash, and then they reduced the points on our units by so much in that 3rd year. I'd
Third
rather
year.
just
That was
do
a good year.
incremental stuff every month. And stuff
Yeah,
like I
I
think the
agree.
Huracan change, for instance, was great. Like, it's still a playable unit in my opinion, but it's not like the guaranteed spike thing that they're doing. So
Yeah.
I'm still like, yes, like maybe I think they could take another looking at, but I don't want them to just go heavy-handed and just kill the army because I hated that when I was playing like Annihilator. Like, why are my Annihilators and Imperator going up? Why is my Fulminator going up? You know, like it's not that great a list, but I just don't want them to be heavy-handed and just like ruins people's experience that way.
It's warranted sometimes, right? Like if you have an army like Gits on release last edition, heavy-handed nerfs are 100% warranted. I don't think anybody would
I
disagree.
mean, if you're a Spike who's spamming Wind Foxes, then I think you deserve it. But like, I think that's pretty heavy-handed nerf for you. But I think if you're someone who just enjoys the Wind Temple, it is not because it just means you have to change up your play pattern. You're not going to have to just guarantee yeet foxes in people's faces and then retreat them with no consequences.
Mhm.
Yeah, I like the fixes so far. Like a lot of things, like in that case, it's just creating a much more like opportunity cost situation. Like, and it's a much more of a risk. It's not guaranteed. Still really super strong. So, but one of those guys just isn't gonna make it back as far as some of the other ones.
Well,
I think I like it.
Paul, I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you, Murgonk. With the Huracan change, I feel like we should, if we're gonna do updates once a month, I feel like they could have dropped that down to 1 unit can move in the shoot phase, and see if that didn't fix the problem.
Sorry guys, this is the lag I was talking about. Hopefully it goes away soon. Hopefully you guys can still. Hopefully the stream is still live.
You could, yeah. You
Um,
could apply the nerf for any number of ways, Jack. I think you could do 1 unit. I think you could do on 3 up. They get to move whatever unit they're trying to move. I like the path that they went because it keeps like the theme of like
Yeah.
that whole temple because that temple is fragile as hell and it's all shooting at 12 inches away. If they're stuck at those 12 inches, they are dead the next turn. So I'm glad they kept
Yes.
it 3 units, but I'm glad they didn't just be like, yeah, you get to move 18 inches or 12 inches or 14 inches with speed of Hish, whatever back. It is a opportunity cost. You might roll low and your unit might die, or you can play it super safe and instead of yeeting them in your opponent's face, you can be 10 inches away, so you can be sort of safe from a redeploy. You have to consider if we have to consider redeploy on deep strike charges, they should have to consider redeploy on shooting. I'm sorry, that's it.
I will say, I like cool, powerful abilities like the Huracan Wind move. I really like stuff like that. The game is more fun when there's lots of powerful abilities to interact with. You know, the game is less fun when it's more just about rolling dice at each other. I think more cool stuff is what the game needs. So I'm kind of sad that they nerfed that ability. It's kind of a theme with this whole edition is they took a lot of cool stuff and they made it weaker for the sake of it not feeling so bad to play against. But too much of that and you start getting a really watered down experience, you know? Which that's one of my points here is that the army rules are kind of just bland in the game. You look at how armies used to play in third edition or second edition for people who've been playing that long. Really powerful, wacky rules that really, broke all the rules of the core rules and made the armies feel unique. Like, we're not going to have something like, Fire Slayers are 4-inch move, but they will fight twice, fight first, and do like a bajillion mortal wounds the second you charge them. You're not going to get anything like that in this edition. You're not going to get a Comet Fall again because spammable AoE mortal wounds are a nightmare to play against. They're not very fun. But then they haven't really replaced it with anything that is as much fun. Like, maybe they just can't figure out what to do that's that much fun but isn't broken. Is that even exist? Can anyone do that? I don't know.
I think a lot of armies just suffer from the bloat problem. And I think Stormcast just puts that in the spotlight. Like, there's just so much for them to think about that they just really, I just don't think they know like what to do. Like, it's just too much for them. And maybe that's just like a combination of War Scroll problem. So maybe that's like how you fix it. But like, yeah, I agree. It's like this weird thing where like, okay, I want to use these units, but are they ever going to be good? Are they ever going to like be seen on the tabletop? Like, it took, like you said, like Jack said, it took 7 years for Power Lords to be good. Like, our Annihilators with Shield's going to need like a their own 7 year turnover where everyone's going out now by 6 or 12. Like, that's not really fun, but like it kind of feels like that's where we're at with the book.
Well, we'll talk about the Stormcast book in particular. Hopefully other armies get more power creep. I've never wanted power creep as much as I do right now because I want the game to be more interesting. I want there to be more cool abilities for me to interact with as a player on one side of the table and the other. Like, I want to play against cool stuff. I don't want to just play against two melee armies bashing each other in the middle and trying to, power through into the right angle or whatever. It's just not that tactically engaging. I'm sure it's fun for like casual play, but like, I think it'll get tiresome for me. Somebody like me, let's say. Another problem I have with 4th edition is that it's, again, talking about a player like me, I played a lot of 3rd edition, and 4th edition is very similar to that. It's mechanically almost the same. It's really like we're playing a 3.5 more than we're playing a new edition, and it's, if you look at it that way, which I can't help but look at that way because I played so much of 3rd ed and this is so similar, it's like a worse version of 3rd edition. Especially the last season of 3rd edition was actually really good with Andor and Blizzard, and there were so many cool list types, and yeah, there was a lot of stuff I didn't like playing against, but I'd rather have to think about that stuff than have nothing to think about, besides like, oh, this has a 3d6 charge and it started here. I know where it's going, more or less, like there's a lot less teleports, there's a lot more predictable stuff, even though I guess this is another problem with the game. The 3-up roll is just everywhere now. I hate 3-up rolls for abilities.
Oh my god.
I really should have put that on this slide because it's so bad. So many armies have to rely on 3-up rolls right now, and it drives me nuts. Like, it feels like a coin flip. I know it's not statistically a coin flip, but it's like, does my unit do something or does it not? I don't know. I can't.
Well, and I feel like it's not being consistently applied because
it's not equitably applied.
Yeah.
They've randomly decided which things it's going to apply on and not, and oftentimes that's not based on like anything.
Yeah, or like which armies. Like, it's very clear that that Stormcast is going to be a 3-up ability army. But then you have a lot of other armies in the game where the worst they have to do is roll a 2-up, and a bunch of them are just, your ability works if you take this hero.
Yeah, are people having fun playing Cruel Boys right now? Like, are a lot of people having fun? Is it a mass appeal kind of army? I feel like people play Warhammer for the dice, like it would be a boring game without dice rolls. But when almost everything you do in your army, like a Cruel Boys, is 2 up, 3 up, 4 up, 5 up, just can I do something? It turns out I can. Cool. I don't know. I don't find that fun at all. I find it just frustrating to play with and to play against. Yeah, Eric, I'm
It's
very glad.
frustrating.
I'm very glad the portal is not a teleport dice roll. I'm so glad it's just a guaranteed thing.
Oh, that would have been
This,
brutal.
think like how bad night, like the night has those really powerful ability. And like some abilities, I'm sure you need to get behind roll because it's a game. Like if Bellator could always strike first whenever he got charged with 2 in his round, that'd be broken as shit. But, like
Yeah.
did the Azros be 3 up on a -1 to hit? Like right now, the way that scroll works is, we'll talk about it. Right? That unit might not do anything. I mean, 108 point hero could not do anything all at that runs, and that's crazy.
Sorry about the
That's
lag,
bad
guys.
design.
Sorry. Yeah, Mergonk was talking about the Knight Azeros being a 3 up to do anything, a 3 up to give the -1 hit, and then a 3 up to also retreat prosecutors or just move them. You know. No, it's not on Mergonk's end, guys. It's on my end, unfortunately, and I'm hosting the stream. I'm just getting these little lag spikes all day long today. Hopefully, it stays with us for a little bit longer. We still got some stuff to talk about. The 3 up dice roll just feels really bad. You know, there's enough. Find other ways to introduce randomness into the game besides attaching a whole ability to a 3 up, like a binary state of it passed or failed. Like, make it like you know, units within combat range have -1 hit. And then if you roll a dice and on a 3 up, it's, you know, units within 9 inches have -1 hit. Like, give some baseline effect so that a hero does something, or give multiple abilities. One of them tied to a dice roll, one of them not tied to a dice roll. So at least they do something besides roll dice and hope for the best, you know. Ironjaws probably are not having fun with all of their key buffs being tied to dice rolls right now. This stuff is just frustrating.
Yeah, Nurgle also has a lot of dice rolls. They're mostly 2 ups. Just like, why? But then everyone will just roll a 1 when it's most important.
Speaking of 2 ups, can we talk about priests? This is not just a Stormcast specific problem, right? Priests suck.
Mm-hmm.
I hate priests. This edition feels so bad for priests. It really just awful. This is a terrible mechanic that they've introduced here.
This is one thing that's super in contention because this is probably one of the most divisive topics. I'm not sure like how, but like at least within the content creators I've seen, a lot of content creators think priests are great. The fact that you can't unbind, the fact that they can chant, the fact that they can store points. The one video that I've seen from, I think it was Stuart McGovern Ironsman. He has a great YouTube channel. You also check it out. Even he says priests are bad. Magic is just way more impactful in this game. And power magic users are leagues beyond power priest users.
Oh my god, yeah.
A wizard 1 is worth more than a priest 2. A wizard with no casting bonus, just the naked wizard keyword. I would rather have that in my list than to have a priest with 2 chants right now. And it's not just because the specific prayers they're chanting are good or bad. It's just the mechanics of chanting prayers is bad. It's unreliable. It's like having a 2+ dice roll for everything you do. And not only do you fail the dice roll, you've spent multiple turns banking for it, and then you have just the same.
It's CP intensive. It's very CP. Like in order for priests to be good, they're CP intensive. In order for magic users to be great, they have to be CP intensive.
Yeah, wizards are always good. Priests are only good with specific circumstances. And that's why, like, I think the only really good priest in Stormcast is the Knight Relictor, because he does something besides just chant prayers.
Yeah, the problem is it comes down to the quality of the lore as well too. And like I felt from the beginning, I love the Knight Relictor and I use him all the time. And he's won some games for me, especially against trolls. But like Ionis, for example, our only 2 chant priest, is useless. But like he would actually be, I think, pretty good if our prayer lore maybe had a couple more things to offer. And especially now with a free translocate every turn, like no one's using the heal one, like rarely. You've got in the
Very
spells,
rare.
you've got Night Vexillor, you've got all sorts of ways to do that. And then blessed weapons, it's like yeah, cool. Like we talk about it all the time. It's a great buff on a few units. It can't go on cavalry unless you roll the 12 or whatever. And it's still a 5. It's like, so what is there in the lore that I'm really wanting to take Ionis with? Nothing. So to me that's part of the problem too. It's not just how inconsistent the prayers are.
Mm-hmm. Maybe the problem is that there's only 3 prayers in the lore. If there were just more
Right.
prayers, you could have like a toolbox kind of feel for a priest instead of
Totally.
being like, I have 2 things and then, the unlimited one, which is never really that. Unlimited stuff is usually never that good, except for Speed of Hish for some reason. But all the unlimited stuff is.
Yeah.
So you really have 2. One of them is a buff that is incredibly hard to chant on a 6 and can only go on specific targets. And then the other one is a situational ability that is worse than what your faction terrain gives you now. So you're right. It could just be a design issue with the lore itself. It could be there's not enough options in the lore. I think it's just the mechanics of chanting suck. I hate the idea that I spend multiple turns banking up for something. Like I'm making tactical decisions to hold power back, and then it's still tied to a 2+ dice roll that I can't do anything about. When I finally save up the 10 points I need to chant blessed weapons, and you roll a 1, and it's like, cool. So I've spent 4 turns doing nothing with this hero. This is like, and that's assuming you even make the dice rolls in the first 3 turns, because you could just roll a 1 each time, or like roll,
and quite
roll like
frankly,
a 2, and then
12 is outrageous.
Yeah.
Like it's
I was gonna say that, like
incredibly difficult to get to that without rolling a 1 in even it's way too much.
Yeah.
Was it like really game breaking in like testing that big blessed weapons went off at like an 8 to 10? Like who was at that studio like winning with like an 8 chant blessed weapon? Like I want to meet that guy.
I think
and here's the deal, right? I think the problem that we're getting to, one, is yes, there's not enough variety. Part of the reason why wizards are so impactful, in addition to your spell lore, most of them have a war scroll spell that they can do, but they also have manifestations. So they also get to put your manifestations on the table, and priests don't.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But
Comment should have been a prayer manifestation.
I think if Bless Weapons for Stormcast was a 4-up prayer that could go on everyone, this would be a different conversation.
Absolutely.
I would still not like the mechanics of chanting, but yes, it would be like having a 4+ roll for something. It wouldn't be multiple turns of saving and then flubbing a roll. That wouldn't be there. What priests mostly end up doing for me is just banishing, and at that point, just bring a Knight Arcanum because they're just going to banish with +1.
The banish better,
yeah.
And translocation loses value now because of the portal.
Oh yeah.
So it's like
we still have Vanguard Wing. We still have a 3+ teleport on our key units.
Oh man.
More than ever, yeah.
I think what they wanted to do was to differentiate magic and casting more, because in previous editions it just felt like prayers were an overpowered version of magic because they can't be unbound, they can't be interacted with, there's almost nothing that stops them. So they were like, okay, well, we need to add some kind of limiting factor to them, and that's where this whole system comes into play, right? I don't know if it was necessary to have this banking mechanic. I don't know. It was an interesting attempt, and I want to see them iterate on it, because I see the problem they're trying to solve in terms of flavor, and I want to see them just do a better implementation of it, because right now it's not really the where the mechanics lead you into the gameplay it creates. I don't think that's working. Not for me anyway. I just want Ionis to be good. I really do.
We just need better priests. Like I think Kritok is actually pretty good as a priest. Someone who gets to counter chant for free, essentially, every turn. I think that's like a good design for a power priest.
Well, yeah, he's just generating D6 ritual points every turn, like that.
Right.
You're talking about Vizek, right?
Vizek, sorry, my bad. Yeah. Vizek Scour.
Vizek is the perfect example of how a centerpiece priest should be designed.
Should be.
Say that 5 times. Jack, say that 5 times. Please.
Not going to happen. I couldn't even say it the first time.
That's a war scroll that's clearly been designed to break the rules of the game, and it's cool and it's fun and it's interesting, right? But what it shows me is that the core rules of the game are too constrained and restrictive, right? Like the core of chanting has to be broken so much that this guy's basically just getting D6 ritual points for free every turn. It has to get to that point for it to feel good, which I think it's an indictment of the whole system. Which actually brings me to my next point that I wanted to bring up. Covering fire, magical intervention, and countercharge are all too powerful. All three of them are far too strong as universal abilities, and every single unit in the game has to be designed around them now. And that means the game's going to be a lot more of the same. Like, I thought countercharge and Nurgle was insane last edition. It was this cool, fun thing that the Glotkin did, and now everybody does it. And now it's not special. And now it's just a thing that everybody can do. I think it's constraining the design too much. Like, how much stronger could Stormstrike Paladors have been if countercharge didn't exist? Right? Because they have to account for the power of that unit gaining strike first during your opponent's turn. So I think they kept them weaker than they could have been. If countercharge didn't exist, Stormstrike Paladors could be way stronger.
It's the same issue with the Dracoths. The Dracoths have the same problem, right? Because in the Dracoth-focused list, you've got that 3-up for strike first. The entire series of units has to be designed around the possibility of that being a thing, and it's nuts. I don't understand it. I think of those three, cover fire is the most egregious.
Yes, I definitely agree. I think covering fire is going to get the most nerfs and the most attention. I think the most damaging one to the game is magical intervention, because it's basically spell portal from previous editions. It expands the limit of what magic should be able to do and what cast chanting should be able to do, and just puts it into a territory where now it's impossible to balance unless you like nerf everything into the ground, basically, which is I think where a lot of this like blandness is coming from.
The game, I mean, AOS is like a melee focused game, and it's weird that covering fire came out as 1 CP, but countercharge came out as 2 CP. I understand the implications that like a countercharge could theoretically win you the game, but I think for all of us, as much as we've been playing, how much more significant has covering fire been than countercharging? I feel like countercharging, it's more, you could threaten with it if you have 2 CP, but like that's all it is. It's just like bluff. But I want to use covering fire like almost every turn.
Yeah. And magical intervention for magic-focused armies.
True, exactly.
There are ways to balance these things. What I mean by too powerful is that it's as the starting point for how every army is designed. You now have to assume you're shooting not just in your turn, but in the opponent's turn. Every army has to be designed with that. Like, how are they going to do Caradron Overlords, man? How is that army going to play assuming you can always shoot in your opponent's turn? You know, it's like every army now has access to Thunderbolt Volley that's usable in the enemy turn. Every enemy turn. It's just such a hard place to start designing the game. It's like, how do you make an army interesting at that? Because if that was a faction ability, like if only Stormcast could shoot twice with covering fire, or like maybe not Stormcast, like Idaneth or Sylvaneth, that kind of seems like an elfy kind of ability. That's a lot more flavor in that army, right? Like, how do you make armies unique when they all have these incredibly powerful abilities to start with?
Well, you have to design the army around trying to interact with these things.
Yeah, you do. But that kind of makes everything feel the same.
Well, or it skews it even further. I know that Skaven aren't getting a lot of play. I don't know why. But when people start seeing the 12 rattling gun lists and the Skaven shooting 18 D6 shots at Ren 2 every turn for free, it's gonna be nuts.
Yeah, it makes armies that are good at something are now twice as good at it. Which
so I'll put a comment regarding this. So first, I want to say two things. Rob says no reinforced units activation. Yeah, I agree, Rob. They should bring things back to the activation economy. I actually quite like the whole reinforcement points. I think we should have 2 reinforcement points per army, and everything else should be singular units. maybe something like that could help, or maybe like reinforcement just needs like some kind of limiter on it or some kind of de-incentivization for it, kind of like Battleshock was last edition, even though not for the most powerful armies. The second thing I want to say is Stuart Ironsman did like a really good video on like game design. Like, why did we create shooting? We created shooting because 2019 was a meta full of Slanesh, Fire Slayers, and what was that really degenerate melee army? What am I thinking of?
And
Flesh Eater Courts.
And
Flesh Eater
one
Courts.
more list, Mergonk. You know which list?
Oh yeah, sure. No, but no. That's I'm coming to that. The only way you could win, you could not win in melee against like 3 top dogs of melee. The only way you could win is if you had shooting, and the only two that could shoot reliably enough were Stormcast and Seraphon.
Yeah.
With their salamanders. So they created shooting, really powerful shooting, and Stuart Arnson goes over this in his video as a counter to really degenerate melee builds. But what they changed was shooting is now much less powerful. It doesn't do mortal wounds at range, it's shorter range. So in their opinion, faster like infantry lists moving up or even cavalry lists moving up will absolutely mess up these lists that have shooting in them. So let's allow the shooting units to better response in. That's why counterfire or like unleash hell, whatever you want to call it. That's why that is.
Seems like my lag is getting worse over time. So I think we move on to. I think those are great points, Mergonk. Like shooting needs to exist conceptually. I don't know if they've hit the right balance right now. I don't know if covering fire needs to exist. I think Unleash Hell was a much better implementation of it. You know, it was more constrained. Specific scenarios had to be met on both conditions on the player's turn and the enemy's turn. I think Unleash Hell was just a better version of covering fire. Like better as in like better for the game, right?
I will say one last thing about this is like all these counter abilities. While like it's really obvious right now to look at these sort of like bad side of them or how powerful they can really be. But I do like I was very encouraged and still am by the designers thinking about how to create more interaction in your turn between like the two of you. Like the game does feel more engaging with the decision making on your end when it's not your turn on, what can I do to kind of slow this down or maybe ruin this tactic or maybe, try and get away. Like that's actually more fun in my opinion to play the game.
Yeah, I mean I agree. Like if covering fire didn't exist, like melee builds with like Vanguard or whatever would be absolutely degenerate. Like it's kind of necessary because stuff is really, really efficient in melee right now.
Sorry, I'm trying to look through my my router settings to see if there's something I can do about this lag. This is really bad. I feel bad about this. Okay.
I think Robert's right too. Like it's not that units using covering fire that effectively. I think it's mostly like Sentinels, us, sometimes Reavers. Who else? KO, KO is not even an army right now.
Skaven are going to become
Skaven
are going to become the king of cover fire. They get to do it for free. It's crazy.
I agree with Jack. I think the only reason we're not seeing as much Skaven right now dominating is because the new models are new models, so people are painting them up. They're still trying to acquire them. Like, just give it like another month or two. Probably by LVO. Like, give it to LVO. Like, watch LVO. Yeah. LVO is gonna have probably 1 to 3 Skaven players in the top 8. Like, I think like at least one Skaven player. Like, yeah, just give it some time. It's all it is. Right now, it's just time. It's not magic. You can't just go drop $300 on a deck, put them in sleeves, and then go to a tournament. So our stuff takes a little bit longer.
All right, let's move on to the last topic before I get too frustrated with this lag. So yeah, let's talk about our first impressions of the Stormcast Battletome. We will be doing a full review, not just an updated tier list or anything. We're actually going to go do like a full-size video as well, talking about every unit again, where we will obviously reference the index because not much has changed since then. So if you've seen the index review, I think there's still going to be enough in there to be interesting. There's new units, there's new point costs, there's new roles. We definitely underrated some stuff a little bit, overrated some stuff a little bit. So let's talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, or in this case, the good, the Iridan, and the Iridan Army of Renown. I think the biggest thing from the Battletome is the point changes that happened a couple days ago. That was really, really well timed. Without those, this book is cooked. It is not very interesting at all.
Yeah.
But 100-point hurricanes are fantastic. Small point cuts to like javelins and Stormdrake Guard. All that stuff is very welcome. It really shakes up the index, I think, in a good way. They could have gone further, right? Like Gardas, Grand Hammers, a lot of.
I think it will though.
Definitely, they did. I think what they do is they pick like 10 things to buff, and they buff them, right? And they went deep on the buffs this time. Like Celestin Prime down 40 points. That's crazy. That's huge.
Yeah.
Well, we saw that with Skaven too.
Well, the Skaven actually got nerfed, right? Like Jezzail's got their range decreased. They had more significant changes in the War Scrolls.
There were a handful of reductions. Yeah, Jezzail's took a hit. Whoever wrote that War Scroll does not understand how to play the game. But overall, their points went down. So, like, they took the feedback and the data from the index because there wasn't a huge change, and applied that. And we're seeing the same thing with Stormcast. Like you said, it's great. It's well received. I think that they need to do more. Our melee infantry need to come down in points.
Yeah. I wish they were stronger and cost more, but they're not going to get a new War Scrolls, so we just have to hope for point costs right now. Grand Hammers are 210, still way too loud. Corbs, your mic's queuing up a lot with some banging noises.
Nope. We're pulling out some sprues. Sorry, guys.
No worries. Grand Hammers at 210. That's still too much, right? For a 9 health unit to cost 210 points is especially a 4-inch move infantry unit. That's way too much. With let's just say it. There's no delivery mechanism that works well enough.
That's the problem,
right?
Yeah.
There's no Gardas, Imperatant, Gavril. You can take all 3 of these, and you can have a D3 move and a +1 charge and a 3 dice pick 2, and you can reroll with a command point. Still not good enough because redeploy exists, and they're so fragile, and they're just going to die to covering fire anyway, right? Like,
For the, and we don't have
Bastion's AOR. Let's take that.
Yeah. So I am gonna play around with that. Because I want to try it. I want to see how it plays on the table. But in the absence of any other significant change, it's just going to have to be point costs. Movement wins games. And right now, our slow infantry cannot compare to our cavalry.
Yeah, the only slow infantry worth using are Questers, but that's because they can teleport. If they didn't teleport, they wouldn't be worth using. And Reclusians, and that's only because they have the strike first with the Terminos, and they have a 3-up to ignore covering fire.
I think most of us also... Yeah, Praetors.
Yeah, well, they're not an infantry unit. They're a shield, They're a support hero.
Yeah, totally. Sure. Yeah.
What kind of sucks is, like, I would take expensive infantry models for us if our rules matched it, right? Like if Grand Hammers could drop like 6 out away, right? Like I would pay 210 for that. Like
totally.
Like I hate that like our stuff just has to get so cheap to a point of like being taken. Like it, I don't know. It just feels like that's just a Stormcast way.
Yeah. Decimators are overcosted at 240. Very strong, very impactful when they do get in. But 240 for a unit that needs so much support to get in, like there's just so much risk to it. It's the same problem that Grand Hammers had last edition. It wasn't that the playstyle was risky. It wasn't that Grand Hammers were fragile. Those weren't the real issue. The real issue is that the point cost didn't match the amount of risk and downsides that the unit has. Like when something is really easy to use and really reliable and really strong, it should cost a lot of points. But when something is missing one of those, you can start shaving points off. Like that's why Stormdrakes had to go up in price at the start of the edition. They were easy to use, reliable, and powerful. Grand Hammers were powerful. That's it. They were not easy to use, and they were not reliable. So they should have been way cheaper. And they eventually got cheaper.
Yeah, you need
And
2 of 3.
Yeah.
I
No,
think
exactly. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
They never got reliable,
No.
except for
Yeah.
Vergonk, but
they never got
Well,
easy
they
to
were
use either.
powerful.
I
No,
think
no,
you
no,
could.
no. I have failed many. I have lost games off of failed Grandhammer charges, but like
I know,
finally
I
when
know,
they
I
were
know.
200, I was like, this is worth the investment. You know, it lets
Totally.
I can use other stuff to try and compensate for this. But right now, if you invest in
I had
Grandhammers
great
over like
tournaments with them.
Paladors, what are they doing? Like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
Why would I spend 340 points on Annihilators using an Imperative and Annihilator when I could just bring Stormstrike Palador, or sorry, Vanguard Paladors?
You could bring Stormdrake Guard for that price.
Yeah, same. They're literally recreating the exact same problem as last edition,
Yes.
which was our exact comment was, why would I bring an Imperative for 170 and an Annihilator for 240 when I could just bring Stormdrake Guard for 340?
Yeah. Okay, so I had a point here that I kind of cut off, I guess, in writing before we went live. Prosecutors and Reclusians are both good. I think we underrated Reclusians a little bit, but I think we were also kind of we didn't really see just how good the Quicksilver draft combo was because we didn't figure that out until like a month into the edition when we figured out, we read the rules very carefully. But I think Reclusians should have been B tier. I think both of these units are going to go up to A tier. I think they're both worthy of that. Reclusians are kind of like an A minus, B plus kind of situation. But prosecutors are great. I think they're going to be a staple in a lot of lists. To slot in 6 of them is very easy. It keeps priests playable as priests. Like Blessed Weapons it's not great, but there's going to be times where you bring like a Lord Relictor and you get that 5-up on turn 1. So it's like, oh, okay, do I throw the prosecutors in now with the portal with Finest Hour? Because you can do those in any order that you want. You can check Blessed Weapons first, and then you can Finest Hour as a response. So that's cool.
Yeah.
Prosecutors are definitely an A tier unit now with the portal in play. The new Paladors are okay.
Yeah, they're fine. They're
fine. They're points cuts away from being A.
180 I think is perfect, but I think we would settle for 190 on them.
Won't happen. They'll probably drop them 10 next update, which would make them kind of playable. At 210, I don't think you should take them. But at 190, I might. 190 and 200, you might.
I do wish they just had the 14-inch. I know the run and charge wasn't going to happen, but I don't know. I find 12 a bit hard lately. I've just been spoiled with the 14-inch, and
didn't you play Evocators on
I just can't face it.
Edition? What do you mean? What are you talking about?
no, I didn't. But lots of dragons.
We got
I don't know. It seems.
Comment in the chat from a name I'm not gonna try to pronounce. There's J's and X's in it, but it says, "I get that power should cycle in AOS. Can Games Workshop let Stormcast have some time in the sun, e.g., hitting the 55% win rates?" No, they actually can't let Stormcast have a high win rate, and I'll explain why. Stormcast are an army that has the most amount of new players coming into tournaments and skewing the stats. Not just new players, but also players who are just, oh, I got the starter box and I have a weekend, so I'm going to go to this casual tournament and have a good time. I'm going to go, 1-4 maybe, or 0-5, but I'm still going to have a great time. I'm going to meet new people. I'm going to get away from the kids for a weekend. We have a lot of those players in Stormcast, more than I would say any other army in the game. Like, there's a lot less of those in Lumineth and probably Seraphon has a lot of those too, because they're cool dinosaurs, right? But other armies, like Tzeentch, is like all hardcore players. There's almost no casual Tzeentch players, So if Stormcast as an army are at 55% win rate, that means the top players, like the people on our Discord server, are going to be like 65%. Like, it's always
more than that.
Probably like 70.
Yeah.
Which is,
I think it's quite high.
It's the same problem as Nighthaunt. It's why they had to nerf Nighthaunt like immediately. It is a faction so many people had because that starter box and the subsequent kits were available on the secondary market everywhere. And when Nighthaunt was showing up with a 65% win rate on their statistics, it means it's higher. It means it's closer to 80. Because it means new players are just out there just YOLOing and winning the game, going 4-1 with no problems.
Yeah.
And that means experienced players are almost never going 4-1. They're going 5-0 all the time.
The rule of thumb we've had is you add about 5% Stormcast win rate. And that's pretty much a good measure of where the army's usually at. So if we're at 50, well, not always a flat 5%, right? But it's like, if we're at a 50% win rate, that means we're probably top half. Because, like, if you're playing it and building it correctly, 51 is like pretty good for Stormcast. What were we in last edition? 47, and we were like one of the top armies.
What we were 44. No,
Yeah.
we were 45. 45, 46, something like that.
Yes, and we were like, we had to get nerfed, right? Like we were like, no, there's no way Comet Fall survives nerfs. Like Tempestors had to get nerfed. A few things had to get nerfed because the army is always better than what the stats reveal.
If you want to see this, if you need to see this for yourself, if you have BCP like the subscription, like pull up like any GT, and like look at all the Stormcast lists. There's probably like 15 to 20 Stormcast players and just that GT. All right, and out of those 15 to 20 players, maybe 3 lists are hyper optimized. The rest of the lists are just people having fun, just bringing whatever they have, like Paul said, and like that's what really, really screws us down.
We're also the army with the most units, which means we're going to have the most F tier units, which means Iridan is going to do a great job at keeping our win rate low so that we are constantly getting buffed. Secretly the best model they've ever added to the range. Best unit in the book because it's going to make everything else cheaper. Okay, another good point about the Stormcast book is that most of the units that are good that we're ranking highly are going to be legal for a while. Most of the bad units are legends. There are some Thunderstrike units that are pretty bad, like Lord Imperatant we talked about. I guess Gardas would count because he's legal for a while. Night Judicator. Like there's still time to fix all this stuff. But a lot of the best units we're using are all going to be Thunderstrike or like Vanguard, which, I mean, if you guys have seen the new Underworlds box, there's new Vanguard coming. Those are, they don't.
Oh yeah, 3 years, baby.
Yes.
3 years.
4.5. 4.5. Come on, let's do it. What else do you guys want to say that's good about the Battletome? Because I was pretty down on it until we got the points, and I've been a lot more excited since then.
All of our big stuff is weirdly playable. It's been very hard to take Stormcast big stuff. We almost always prefer things like we prefer reinforced cavalry over bringing a single entity monster. That was like our whole pattern last edition. Bringing a single entity in our army was a liability, and now it doesn't feel like that anymore.
Yeah, Star Drake is not only cool and good, but it's good in a way that is appropriate for a big dragon. It eats stuff, it hits stuff, it flies around. It's a big body that takes a lot of hits. Like, I'm actually really glad that the Star Drake is finally a good monster.
I also would say I think a good thing is even though we feel kind of pushed into like archetypes, we do get it's still like new, right? Like how many people were actually playing Krondi last edition, right? Like it was mainly, I mean, yeah, you Paul.
Totally.
Like, but how many point cuts did he need and Karazai need to actually like, be way more playable, right? Like when the index came out, everybody was like, "Wow, Krondi like was tired of being bullied." And he was gonna bully somebody back.
Krondis was always good. Karazai was always good. The problem was they started at 650.
Exactly. Like that's what I mean.
Vigilors were always a good unit. Yeah, it's like Vigilors were always a good unit.
Were they?
But they started at 195. At 130, they're a good unit. At 195, they're not.
I remember that. That was actually in a game that you got like 4 CP around. It was like what? What?
That was wild.
Yeah.
Vigilors are good. I wish they were good for other reasons, but they're good. It's just disappointing that they didn't get a new War Scroll. But yeah, okay, sorry. Still, keeping on the positivity before we start the salt mining. What else is good about the Battletome?
One more positive thing, I'm glad the Vanguard Chamber is playable. Like, if you want to build like a good Vanguard force, it is actually extremely, extremely playable.
Yeah, it's very good.
Yeah.
And it's
I've been having so much fun with Paladors.
Other than Vanguard Raptors with long strike crossbows, that chamber has not been playable for 7 years. It's insane.
Yes, Hurricanes have not been good since 2nd edition. And they were just like okay in 2nd. Not great.
The new Arcanum, like we always took an Incantor.
Yes.
There's like never a reason to take an Arcanum unless you just need a 30-point squeeze. I forgot what the Arcanum even got released.
Never happened.
Like I think it was like 145 or something at release or whatever last
Arcanum
edition.
was 145 at release. It went down to 90. Yes.
Yeah. So like, I don't know. I'm just really happy that like we're all like, yeah, like this Arcanum like is amazing. Like it feels fun using an Arcanum.
I'm very glad that the list building problems we were describing before the Night Zephyros change, where everything just felt way too constrained and it was way too hard to make a list with the units you wanted. I'm glad they fixed that by changing the Zephyros. I feel like that like if you really want to squeeze as much as possible, before the best way to do it was to bring Estrella, which is like 220 points, and then long strikes were 340. So like you're starting, 500 points down 550 even every time, which that felt really bad, but they fixed that. It seems it's a lot easier to build the kind of list with the kind of units you want now. I really like that. I like also our cavalry is awesome, and all of it is useful in some way. Even Dracoths, which are not the best, are still good in their own way. Like Fulminators do a ton of damage for their cost. Concussors have that strike first thing with the Lord Celestin on Dracoth. Stormdrakes are fast and flying and have a really cool rampage if you roll a 3+. Stormstrike Paladors have a really good counter charge into that strike first. Just strike first on the charge in general is good. Like there's no dice roll attached to it, which means you can have them like charge in on the flank and do like a supporting attack kind of thing on a unit, so you can just add more damage to push something into the grave. Cavalry is really well designed in the Stormcast book. I really like where cavalry's at. Infantry needs work, but the cavalry is done well. Like Vanguard Paladors are the stars, obviously, but they're not so good that none of the other cavalry is usable. And it feels cool to mix and match different cavalry options together. I like being the cavalry faction.
Yeah. And even though Scions of the Storm has been nerfed to such an extent in this edition because of the edition's rules, we still feel like the rapid assault force. That, like, we have the ability, because of the cavalry units in our book, to decide when we are going to commit to the battle, and when we do, it is really, really powerful.
Yeah, it's a shame that comes with being so fragile. Like, Stormcast should be the guys who take hits based on just how the models look. We've got big shields and big armor. We should be able to take hits better. But it is really cool that we are very, what's the word I want to use here? Purposeful army. Like every maneuver we make has to be very like planned. Not like it can't be just random, or it can't be an accident.
We have to play very tactically.
Yes. And you do, when you do, I think 3rd edition did a better job with this because our damage is a little bit lower now, but you still get that same kind of feeling where like, no, I've done like a crippling blow to you here because I positioned well, and Scions lets you do that. Especially now that we finally have good volume shooting with Hurricane Raptors being only 100 points, 200 points for 25 shots on crit hits. That's good. That's a good ratio finally. So yeah, we can do a lot of stuff with Scions. It's still a great tool. I'm glad that it's still relevant after all these years.
I do like the new call for aid. I don't have to bring back 5 Redeemers. I could bring back Cavalry. Thank God.
So good.
I like it.
Yeah, sometimes
but
you bring back long strikes. Sometimes you bring back
Call of Heaven
prosecutors.
Sent is a very clever mechanic, because if you think about it, every time
Right.
we've built a Stormcast list in the past, we've been like, oh man, I wish this list had 200 more points. Except the problem is, if we did have an additional 200 more points, it would probably be really busted sometimes. A lot of the times, they've essentially given us close to 200 points without giving us 200 points, and that's a pretty clever way to implement that.
I wish Heaven Sent
for an elite force.
I wish it didn't push us into reinforced units. I wish that if you Heaven Sent a non-reinforced unit, you just got the whole unit. So that like if you brought 2 Dracoths and you wanted to just revive 2 Dracoths, you wouldn't feel stupid. It feels like we're pushed too much into bringing reinforced stuff, and that part of that is the regiments too, right? Like because you want to stick to 2 drops, you want to just like, oh, I can't bring 12 units. I guess I'll just bring reinforced prosecutors instead of having 2 squads moving independently and still getting +1 hit from Vigilors. But yeah, Heaven Sent is cool. I like it. Especially on prosecutors, because they get the 3d6 charge and the shooting after reviving, which is great.
Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, Heaven Sent is good. Finest Hour, less so.
Okay, so let's start talking about the Iridan of the book. I've got some points here. Feel free to add your own. Finest Hour sucks. Like I've come completely at 180 on this. Finest Hour exists to give you +1 to wound on melee weapons.
Yes.
The save bonus is almost irrelevant unless you're Karazai or Star Drake. That's the 2 times the save bonus is relevant. But even then, you still don't want to be charging into more stuff. You'd still rather just power through into stuff rather than fighting it.
I think it's good against covering fire.
Definitely. Yes. I would say it's good against covering fire, yeah. But it
But-
should be better. You know, it's just
not that good.
yeah. Its primary purpose is the +1 to wound with melee weapons, which is unfortunate. The Stormcast Battletome is not a very big change from the index. It's like the War Scrolls are almost all the same. They nerfed some stuff even, like Hurricane Raptors got worse. Comet is now harder to cast, which who
Yeah,
thought
weird.
the Comet deserved an 8 after the
What do you-
changes they made in the errata?
What are you talking about? The Hurricane Raptors got worse. They're
So-
way better.
No, they're much worse. They used to get +1 to wound on themselves if you somehow got in combat with a Vanguard unit, so you could be shooting on 2s and 2s. Now they give a melee attacks against a unit that they shot +1 to wound. But we already have Finest Hour, as we discussed. So like,
I disagree with that, but that's like a personal opinion thing.
Yeah, I'm with you, Murdon.
I don't think it's worse. I think it's just like a side grade. I think it's literally just like
Yeah,
it's like League of Legends. It's just
yeah.
like it's just an
Eh.
adjust.
if I had to pick one, I'd pick what it used to be. Now that they're pointed correctly, I would rather have the +1 to wound back on them.
That's like an opinion thing. That's like
Okay,
It's very
fine.
hard to judge. Really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Opinions on this channel? What? No
What?
way.
Disagreeing opinions? Hell no!
Um,
Get out of here.
the way units interact in our book is not terribly interesting. Like we're talking about, like in theory, the idea that hurricanes shoot something and then your melee units go in and they get a bonus. That's a cool combo, but it's actually not that interesting when it plays out because we already have +1 to wound, and it is just +1 to wound. It's not like you can get +2 or it's not +1 damage or it's not +1 attack. Like the actual combo itself isn't that interesting, and that's pretty much the whole book. Like Star Drake. Even the few times we have combos, like with the Star Drake on with Celestin, +1 attack, but it doesn't work on him, just other units.
Yeah.
You know?
Silly.
Iridan has a prayer that buffs like nearby Ruination Chamber units, but only after they fight, and it heals them for D3, which is also known as 1, and then it gives them a 6 up ward, but only after they fought, right? Which is like, if you fought, you don't need to heal because you hit them first. You need to heal after taking damage, which you might not survive, and that's when you would actually want the ward, is when you're taking the damage. And then it's only a 6 up ward. So it's like they just built all of these somewhat interesting ideas, but they didn't push them enough. They didn't flesh them out enough, and I don't know why.
I remember it was Heywo or Vince Venturella who put up the shitty ability triangle, and they said it's like the three vertices of these triangle are bad to mediocre effect, bad timing, hard to get off. Eridan's prayer is all three. It goes off on a 4, so it's not even like a 3. The timing is really bad because it only lasts until the end of turn, so you don't even
yeah.
get the effect for 2 turns.
That's another part.
It happens only after you fight, which means if after you fight you get to heal or you get a ward, so you're not going to get to use one of the 2 effects. And the effect is so mediocre, and it's gate kept behind those 2. Ideally, you want one of these things. One of these vertices is okay. You want the other 2 to be good. All 3 are bad. Eridan is just she's last witnessing the shelf this edition. That's all I'm going to say.
That's definitely a big part of this battle tome. Is most of the new stuff sucks. Lord Vigilant on Morgriff and Iridan are both F tier units. I don't think there's any point value that they would get to that we would even play them. Even if they were 200 points, would we play them a 12 health 3 up unit? We can do better for 200.
No.
There's nothing about them that incentivizes me to build with them. Like
Yes.
Krondys was 620 when he first came out, okay? But people were still building lists with him because he's a fun model.
Yeah. Remember
His rules were cool.
Do you remember that list I made with the Ren 3 crossbows that used Krondys?
Yeah, Ren
Hell
3
yeah.
crossbows and a bunch of Knight Judicators. That's like such a fun list. Sure, it wasn't that competitively viable until he went down like 100 points. But that was always a fun list. What possible fun could you think of with a Lord Vigilant or Morgriff? Oh, great, I made your Goblin Chieftain fight last. Whoa, who cares?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Light of Aetherion, watch out, you know?
Yeah.
Why does a free guild griffin hit harder than a literal demigod that's riding a giant raven?
Yeah, I don't know. They had no idea what to do with them. The Erden is literally carrying the axe Terminos axe on steroids, and she does D3 damage. Like,
Yeah, okay, let me break this down. The Lord Terminos is a Stormcast who is given the task of being one of the few things in the all of the realms that is not only capable of killing a Stormcast forever, but is also like a solemn duty that they have to undergo. And that's a cool story hook. You've got these immortal warriors who get reforged too many times, and the merciful thing to do for them, not for the realms or the battle, like you give up a soldier that is an immortal fighting machine because it's merciful to kill them. That's such a cool ass story hook. And they have this big axe, and the axe is actually good. 4 attacks, wounds on 2s, I believe, rend 2, 3 damage a hit, crit mortals. Like, yes, this is how Stormcast should be hitting. None of this like 5 attacks, 3s, rend 1, 2 damage nonsense that every hero is plagued with. Terminos is sweet. Cool designed model, looks sweet, great story. Iridan the Witness is the first Terminos. She is the first one who took up an axe to kill, I think, one of her best friends or something in the lore. And so you'd think, oh, cool, a named Lord Terminos. She's going to be at least as good as the Lord Terminos, right? No. She has a 3 up to wound, rend 1, and D3 damage instead of 3. She is worse in every single way, and she is the first of her kind. And it is so frustrating that they would ever think that that's an appropriate way to design something. Like, the balance, it doesn't matter. Just in terms of, like, fluff, that just doesn't make sense. She is the first one, but also the worst. Like, how? And she's riding a big monster, right? So you think, oh, cool, big monster. That's going to do a lot. It's going to give her a lot of health. No, 12 health on a 3-up save. No ward. Weak attacks. I think
no ward.
Max 12 on 4s and 2s. Like, it's just not exciting, And then you get to how bad the rules are. Like, the Iridan is such a disappointing war scroll. It doesn't match at all the story. It doesn't match the Warhammer community articles that they were putting out about her. Like, what did they say about the Vigilant on Morgriff, which was like they blast them into ash or something with their spear? Do you guys remember what they were saying there?
No, but sounds like an overreach.
It's like, it's just crazy. I remember the Lord Relictor they described as, attacking enemies with lightning while buffing their allies, and they have like a new hammer that's supposed to do a lot more damage. Like, the Lord Relictor has a 2-handed hammer now. You wouldn't know it because it has the same stats as a 1-handed hammer. There's no difference. Same rule. Like, there's no change at all. It makes me think that there's another version of the Stormcast Battletome written somewhere, and that's what the Warhammer community articles were based off of. Because those are oddly specific things to write a hype article about, and the Warhammer community guys are not they're not the marketing team. They just get told what to write and put in these articles, right? So they're going to look at the War Scrolls and be like, oh, he's got a sweet hammer, like the Knight Relictor article. You guys remember that? Watch out for that relic maul,
No.
Oh, man.
If there was nothing on the War Scroll, they would have talked. We would have basically learned that from the articles. But they were talking like there was something there. There was a lot of this. Go through the old hype articles that they were putting out for Stormcast.
Yeah.
It's all there.
There was stuff about mount traits, too.
Yes.
And then, none of the books have mount traits. What's that about?
The Griff Stalker is supposed to have, like, a connection to Mor, the god of death. And it's supposed to steal life essence from people.
Yes.
They mentioned this multiple times. And then it never manifests in the rules. Never mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Like
that little Deepkin hero has a better connection to death than the actual big bird.
Yeah, with the fish hook. Yeah. So I think there's a version of the Stormcast Battletome that they wrote the Warhammer community articles based on, but that's not the one that they sent to the printers. And I don't know if that's because they sent the wrong version to the printers or they just got the versions wrong. I don't know. This is some crazy hopium here. But maybe that means we're going to get a 4.5 book. Maybe we're going to get a mid-edition Battletome.
Yeah, I mean, the release is pretty bad. It's like the only thing, and we're going to get to the tier list, but it's like virtually none of the heroes except obviously there's heroes we already had, but out of the new kits, when I think of what's playable, it's probably just Reclusians, Prosecutors, and Terminos. That's it, right?
Yeah. And Prosecutors aren't new. Yeah. We have Prosecutors.
Exactly.
Sorry. So only Reclusians, Lord Terminos, maybe the Stormstrike Paladors, and that's only because we're probably expecting them to go down at least 10 points.
And Reclusians are
right now they're competing.
Reclusians are just Grand Hammers mixed with Sequitors. They're not like a totally unique concept. They're not they're fine. They're okay. They're new enough, but I wanted something really new and exciting and aesthetically different than what we currently have.
Lee Brazil says Tornus. I don't think Tornus is playable, Lee Brazil, and I'll tell you why. He's another example of a scroll they had no idea what they're doing with. He's a Knight
Yeah.
Azeros who gives up the Prosecutor moving ability for 3 additional rally points. Now that's good. It's rally points, not rally dice. So you're getting 3 to heal outright. But think of like what's again. I mentioned that shitty ability triangle, which is bad timing, mediocre effect, hard to get off. Think of the hoops you have to jump
Yeah.
through with the Tornus.
The
What are you going to be
sequencing.
rallying with him? You're going to be rallying Prosecutors or Reclusians with him, right? Which means he's going to be supporting them in combat. It means you will most likely get charged in order to take damage. So you have to be in combat, or which is either you charge or they charge you. B, survive that damage. C, either kill that enemy unit so you end out of combat, or if you don't, retreat your unit so you end out of combat.
In which
'Cause you
case you
can't
take
rally in combat.
D3 mortals on the way out too.
You take D3 mortals. Assume they don't countercharge you because your opponent knows you have a Tornus sitting there. So if you retreat, they will spend 2 CP to countercharge you. And then you try to rally to get what? 2 Reclusians back on average? That's it?
And it costs a command
You're
point to do
spending-
that.
It costs a command point to do that, and you're spending 220 points. Like, why not just take more Reclusians? Why not just take more Prosecutors?
You can almost have a
Um,
whole squad of Reclusians for the cost of Tornus.
Yeah.
It's only 60
Yeah,
points
and
more.
Yeah, and Prosecutors are only like same thing for Prosecutors. They're only 60 points
Yeah.
more. And it's like, when you think about the play pattern, the person who designed Tornus to
Mhm.
Redeem does not understand this play pattern. And so if they
Didn't
had,
play with them.
if they had, they would have gotten the what's called the Talia Vedra thing, where Talia issues rally to a
Right.
unit, it can issue it in combat. I think that would have been really cool because it would have made Tornus to Redeem like a great
Exactly.
sort of centerpiece frontline fighter. Something we don't have. We don't have a lot of we have Terminos, who is a great hitty hero. We don't have a lot of paladin heroes. Like, for those of you who played role playing games, you know that really tanky paladin who can fight but also sort of heal his allies in that little party or whatever. He could have played a great paladin role, but
Yeah.
we didn't get that.
He would be better, like this ability being bad, and not bad, but let's say really situational, right? It's okay to have really situational abilities if there's something else the hero does that isn't situational, is more uniform and more general purpose, in which case is Lantern. But the Lantern is a 3-up dice roll, only affects units in combat, and the D3 healing is okay, but if you really just need D3 healing, you'd rather use a Night Vexillor because it's guaranteed. There's no dice rolls, you don't have to stay in combat range. Yeah, so Tornus is bad, even though the model is sick. His rules are really bad. Same with the Knight
Honestly,
Azeroth.
Light of Sigmar is a bad ability too. Light of Sigmar is you have to be in combat. You have to have the unit that you're supporting be in combat. You have to roll a 3-up, and then you don't even get both the effects. If it was heal and -1 to hit, sure. You have to pick one,
Yeah.
and it'll be -1 to hit most of the time. And it's like, why are we just gatekeeping? Why are we hitting the shitty ability triangle on all 3 vertices? Can we please just remove at least one? Can we have one of the vertices be good?
I'm gonna add 2 more vertices.
Why
I'm
do
gonna
we
make
keep
it.
doing this?
I'm gonna make it a pentagon. We're gonna add point cost to the unit, and we're also gonna add the amount of text you have to read, just unnecessary verbiage.
I disagree with adding points cost, and here's why. Right, points cost is a power level equation. What you are getting versus what you are paying for it. Vigilors were bad at 195, but they're great at 130. So that's a power level thing. I mean this from a purely war scroll design. Is this unit fun to play kind of thing?
Okay.
I don't want to jump through hoops and get buffs that are mediocre, and I only get to pick one of the 2 mediocre buffs.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Give me something fun.
Tornus, I think, is unplayably bad at 220. I don't think he would have to be cheaper. He'd have to be the same price as another squad of Reclusians to justify being 140 is where he'd have to be. And he will never be that cheap because he's a named character with 8 health. And I think he has Ren 2. So there's no way they're going to make him that cheap just based on raw stats.
He also has a shooting attack, so yeah, there's no way.
Does he? Oh, I don't even remember that.
Yeah, he has he throws his great spear. 3s and 3s, -2 D3.
One shot?
One shot.
D3, wow. That's bad. Wow. 3s and 3s, okay. That's probably why I forgot about it. Yeah, I don't think he's ever going to be that cheap. Knight Azeros kind of has the same problem. I think the Knight Azeros, Man, if moving prosecutors didn't require a 3+, Knight Azeros would be so cool and so fun, and a lot of this book would look so different. But because you can't reliably move your units around, it's just bad. Oh, sorry, one more bad thing about Tornus. Yeah, I thought of this while you were talking about it. You have to stay in range of those Reclusians or whatever you're trying to rally, and often
Yes.
they will just charge out of range. Like that just happens all the time with support heroes, right? Especially ones in Stormcast, we drop them more than 9 from an enemy, and then we have to finish a charge and stay wholly within 12. But when you're doing your piling, you're like, oh, I want to make sure I can do certain things, and that just further restricts your movement, or you just get pulled out of range. You know, like it's really frustrating when that happens.
I will say, like, free movement is really, really powerful. Like, we just saw
Really
what
good.
happened with the Huracan Temple. I'm okay with that being a 3-up. I just don't want Light of Sigmar to be a 3-up. Like, come
Yes.
on, man. What
If-
are we doing here?
I would rather it be like they can make like a 3-inch move, and if you roll a 3-up, they can make a 9-inch or something. Like, give me some failure thing that happens, even if I don't succeed the dice roll, so that I feel like I'm not an idiot for bringing this model. The Light of Sigmar being a 3-up, is it so powerful that you have like a -1 hit effect? Is that so strong that you need to tie it to a 3+? A -1 hit in combat with that model?
And
That's
both
not that
units have to
good.
be in combat because it has to be in combat with him, and the unit that you're helping out also has to
Yeah.
be in combat range of him.
Ha-
So it's like, what are we doing?
It's the heal,
And it's only
right?
combat. It's not -1 to hit for shooting. It's not -1 to hit for, it's not doing anything. It's literally just a combat phase ability. And think about it this way: the Knight Azeros has 2 abilities, both of which happen on a 3-up, which means you are going to have that person who spends 180 points on an Azeros, which does nothing all game.
Yeah, exactly.
Just
I
not
also,
good. But
I was gonna say, like if you want to
Go ahead.
compare it to like, I'm sorry, if you want to compare like our like Sigmar, like you were saying, if you want to compare it to something, forgets it's a spell cast that's unlimited for -1 to hit on their units, and gets have like Scraggot, like units with like that could get bonus to cast. So like I don't understand the disconnect. It's like, okay, this one army could just do it whenever they want with like no downsides, but like we needed 3+ to do it once.
all right,
I mean,
Here's-
Luminous just gets it, right? They're just like, yeah, -1 to hit.
here's my most charitable interpretation. There is a reason why Stormcast should have limited access to -1 hit, because we are the effective health army. We have 5-up wards, we have 3-up saves. They multiply off each other, right? You guys have all seen that Mortal Wounds 101 video that we did, which explains the concept of effective health. -1 hit is another one of these things. So if Stormcast, for example, could be -1 hit and -1 wound and -2 attacks with Karazai and Praetors and like 2-up saves and a 5-up ward, all of this scales like crazy. We become potentially unkillable. So there is a reason to limit the amount of negative modifiers to hit and wound rolls in a Stormcast army. I thought the limit of being in combat with this 150 mil base, that would be enough of a limit, right? You can play around that. If you're charging in, you can just not be in combat with the Azeros. There's a lot of situations where you can avoid combat with him. I don't think it needed to be tied to a 3-up. I think that's the wrong way to go with stuff like this, especially because the other ability on the War Scroll is tied to a 3-up as well, which I think I agree with you, Murgonk. It's such a powerful ability. It probably should be tied to some kind of dice roll. It shouldn't be totally reliable, because moving at the end of every turn is really strong, especially on 12-inch flying move units.
Yes.
So that ability I'm fine with being on a 3-up because it's so strong. But then he should do something else besides that. It's just, I don't know. All right, I'm done ranting about the Azeros and Tornus.
He's also just gonna die. So
yeah, because he has to be within
not really.
12 inches.
It's never gonna happen for you.
It's going to not happen, and then you're going to lose both units, and then you're going to wonder why you didn't just bring more prosecutors and keep them in reserve so that you can just throw another wave at your opponent.
Yeah, or hang out around the storm potty.
That's what they don't seem to. That's what they don't seem to realize for combat heroes who aren't like wizards or priests. It's like you have to point them competitively with the unit that they're meant to be bringing alongside them.
Yeah,
If
like
they are not
Terminus.
pointed competitive, exactly. It's like if they're not pointed competitively with the unit they're meant to be helping out, they will never be taken. Like the Lord Vigilant on Morgriff is, I believe, 170 right now. he will not be taken unless he's 150 or 160, which makes him slightly more competitive with prosecutors and reclusians. Same thing for Terminus. He needed to be 140 or 150. They need to be closer to that unit that they are bringing alongside them.
I still don't love him at 150, but I'll play him. Whereas I wouldn't play him at 170. Okay, let's rant about Annihilators. They have gutted one of the best designed units from 3rd edition. Like, it was such a cool thing that they did, and it's just gone. Unless you play this Army of Renown, which I want to call crappy, but I know as soon as I do that, somebody's going to go 5-0 with it and make me look like a fool.
Someone's gonna do a real big combo with it. It does
I don't
have
think it's
enough
crappy.
options.
I think it's if I W, I win the army in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
But you can't
That's the
risk a
problem.
double. You can't risk doubling because Bastion has to start on the table, and you want everything else in reserve, pretty much, right?
Well,
Like-
Bastion can run up, right? Because you have a spell for +2. He gets a pregame move.
But
so he
his
can just run
pregame
up.
move has to. Okay, so if you're letting your opponent go first and you're using a pregame move in deployment, you're pushing him into the middle and telling your opponent to move. Like, he's gonna die, and then your whole army is dead.
Yeah, probably.
So it has to go first.
The
It's
thing, yeah. The setup aspect of that rule, it makes it a lot more difficult. And I'm not sure that it needed to be that way. Like the fact that you can't set them up and do it makes it a lot more difficult for sure.
My gut feeling is that they did not like the play. People did not like the play experience of Annihilators deploying 7 inches away and then not being able to do anything about it. I just think it could have been handled a little bit better. Like maybe like you tie the blazing impact to just shutting off redeploy somehow. Like if it does mortal wounds and you
Yes, we
shut those
talked
mortal
about that
wounds off.
before for sure.
Well, that's what
Yeah.
I always felt like Shock and Awe should do. I feel like Shock and Awe should turn off commands, but anyway.
Oh, not even commands. If it just shut off redeploy,
Just
like if
redeploy.
he's stunned to move,
Just redeploy.
If it just did that, it'd be playable.
Well,
Mhm.
it feels like they designed a lot of 4th edition because of that playstyle, Merconk, where they added redeploy and covering fire in the way that they did, and it specifically counters that playstyle. I feel like they didn't have to remove it. Like, they built counters into the game that every army can use now. Well, not every army can use covering fire, but every army can redeploy, right? And then they just like killed the playstyle anyway. It's so disappointing because, like, what do they do now? They just are slow infantry.
Worse reclusian.
Like, what price do Grandhammers have to be to see play in a normal Stormcast army?
180,
Less even
180,
maybe.
190.
Like
It can't be less because their damage is through the roof. but
like
190,
Retributors are 180 right now, and they're not
Yeah.
played.
Yep.
And Retributors have way more health, a lot more viable in that sense, because if you fail the charge, you have like meat to back it up, you know? They scale, not better, but they scale very well with attack buffs too. Like, I don't know if Grandhammers are even playable at 180. I think
Honestly,
they might have to be cheaper.
They could have kept the reroll charges. Come on, man. Like you're already redeploying away from them. Everybody is.
Yeah.
Do we
Yeah,
really
totally.
need the like that redeploy charge thing was really a cool thing about them. It's like they want to get into combat. It's like I don't know what their plan for the unit is. I feel like they might just keep making them cheaper until somebody might be bold enough to try. Honestly, that someone might be me.
What do you
Yeah.
even try with them? Like,
I try Imperatant. I basically play it. If they, the thing is, so right now the problem is I'm trying to build an Annihilator list because I always do. That's just me. Everything is too expensive.
yeah,
140, like for like, if you gave me a 7-inch charge and no redeploy, I could see the current prices. 210 for Grand Hammers, 140 for Imperatant. I could make that work. With redeploy and with everything around Annihilators, their charge immortals, their reroll charges going away, they're just not as reliable anymore. And I think that for that, I'd be willing to pay 180, 190 for Grand Hammers. And 120 for Imperatant, because that's literally his only use, I think. 120, 130.
I think the package needs to be like at most 500 points. No,
What,
less.
you mean you mean two Annihilators and an Imperatant?
Yeah, I think it's got to be like close to 400 even, because the Imperatant does literally nothing except enable this idea, right?
He doesn't sit in the back anymore. Once he comes down, he's blown his load.
That's it.
Like you're not going to be
Yeah.
calling in ODST drops.
But unlike even a more useful hero like the Azuros, or sorry, not the Azuros, Zephyros, right? She can teleport around and score tactics. Imperatant can't even do that. He can't even shoot. He does literally nothing else but that, right? So he's basically just a tax on this concept. So he could be 100 points. And then Grand Hammers could be probably like 160. And then I think this
Nah.
package could work.
I think Grand Hammers can't be 160. I think they do way too much damage for that. I'm telling you, I would play them at 180, 190.
Okay, I mean, I'd like them to be cheaper, so we'll start there. We'll
Yeah,
start
yeah,
with
yeah.
180.
I mean, it's like realistically, I know what damage they have, and the thing is, they still have countercharge potential, which I know a player recently took Bastion and some Grand Hammers, not in the AOR, just regular Grand Hammers, walked them off the board and countercharged, and that's like a huge thing.
Their damage
but-
is huge. I'm not going to discount that. Like, that's why we kept them in C tier, because there is a play with Lord Celeste and Quicksilver Draft and 6 Grand Hammers. But that right now just seems worse than using Reclusians.
Yes, it is. It's
I think
expensive
also,
and
like,
worse.
they could have given us either a prayer or a spell for like +2 to charge, and that would have solved a lot of this, because then we would just use translocate or the new terrain piece that they gave us. And then I think this entire army approach that we used to have would be viable again.
More reliable teleport charging. Yeah, restricted to infantry if you have to. Like non-flying
Sure.
infantry, so prosecutors can't get any better. You know, make it just
It
for
would-
foot
yeah.
models.
Yeah, it'd be for Annihilators, basically.
Yeah.
You know, maybe that's the ability that he gets, and you just hang out in the back near a teleport unit or near the piece of terrain, and he gets to give it to one unit per turn, and then you send them out.
Mhm.
Like that
No,
would
they
have been
want
totally
they want the
fine.
Imperator to play like he is in the cutscene, which is he lands, there's Annihilators landing around him, and then they move up and kill something.
Well,
Yeah,
they took it
okay.
away from him.
But so I
Make it a 3-inch
I-
move instead of D3. That's a simple
Yeah.
amount.
yeah,
That's
because
a
like
simple fix.
six-
Absolutely.
6 inch, because effectively that gives you a 6-inch deep strike, right? And that's not beyond the realm of possibility, because we've got units in the game that have 7 and 6-inch deep strikes.
Zinch gets
Well,
them.
one of the
Nidon
of the
did it.
Dracoline
Nidon had a 7-inch
heroes-
deep strike with the Alrek. He transports a
But, like,
Nidon unit
a
7 inches away.
guys, think about Estrella gets the +2 to charge of any
Mhm.
like what sacrosanct cavalry around her. It's like
Yeah.
we have we actually have it. Just not with the units that should have it. It's
Gavriel
like that's
has it.
kind of bizarre.
Gavriel is a cool
Yeah.
thing. We should get more of that. Yeah. But both of those are legends, and they designed legends way after they designed the index, and probably even the Battletome, honestly. Okay, carrying on with the salt. This personally annoys me. They are not consistent when weapon options matter and when they shouldn't. Remember, they said, you know, weapon options are going to be cosmetic at the start of the edition. They showed us Liberators, and they're like, shields don't matter. It's cool, guys. Build them however you want. You know, it doesn't matter. And then they went back on that immediately, and they were like, hey, Chariot still matters. Stormdrake Guard, it still matters. I'm sure there's other units off the top of my head. I can't think of them, but there's like, is it gonna matter or not? Can I build lances on my Stormdrakes mixed with swords or not? You know, they got to make up their mind on this. And then Reclusians get this cool new weapon option. It's shown as a new model, and everyone expects it to get a different war scroll, and it just doesn't. It's the same thing. Like, and you just know next edition they're going to have different war scrolls or different rules or something. Like, this is not. They can't keep this going for another edition, right? Like, shields have to matter at some point. The models need to have rules that reflect what shields do.
I assumed the 200 weapons would have got like 1+ attack or something. Like, oh, here are these like really like almost like Death Company Preclusions, right? Like
Something.
Yeah,
right?
they should just have more rend or more damage. And that's it.
I'm okay with two-handed maces not having extra damage, but why did they keep that on Annihilators, and why did they keep that on Stormdrakes? Especially since I look at the Stormstrike Paladors, those guys are literally just Stormdrakes on horses.
Yes.
Exact
Yes.
same swords and lances, and for some
Exact
reason,
same models. Yeah.
like,
It's-
what are y'all doing? Just like make up your minds. Like, what is this?
Yeah, it really just irks me. It's not a balance thing. It's just a flavor thing or lack of flavor. Like, what's the problem with having more options? Even if one of them ends up being the best option, as long as there's still an option, right? It's better than having no option. Maybe I'm crazy.
I
I
mean,
think it's just about consistency. That's all. Like it's inconsistent, so it's a bit annoying, right? It's like Margog, you're saying, it's like just make a decision. Does it not matter or does it matter?
Yep. Okay, we got a comment about this earlier. I didn't want to say anything until now. But Eric in chat says prosecutors should be 3 health. Yes, they should. Stormcast
Ooh.
should be 3 health. We should not have
That's
a
fine.
2 health Stormcast anywhere.
Yes.
Shouldn't
No,
exist.
yes.
We're
If
gonna be here all night.
that is my number one complaint with this army is the health density.
Yes.
We are on 40 mil bases. Our models are now, they used to be the same size as ogres. Now they're a little bit smaller than ogres. Make our basic infantry 3 health and our big infantry 4 health for the love of all that is holy.
Yep. Almost everything in the Stormcast book should go up 1 health. You know, knights are fine at 6. A lot of our cavalry is fine at 5. Dracoths should obviously be 6, right? Storm Drakes feel
Yeah, that's
Storm Drakes
crazy.
feel right at 9. Chariot feels right at 10. Maybe it should be 12. Paladors feel right at 5. Right, it's a basic dude riding a big mount. Cool, 5. Basic dude shouldn't be 2 health though. Right, a basic dude should be 3. And if that means, yeah, we end up with 15 health squads, and then you reinforce and you get 30, and you stick a 5-up ward on it, and it's 100 points like Vindictus. It's like, okay, well, what if it's
Bump the points up?
what if it's not 100
Bump the
points?
points
What
up.
if there is no 5-up ward? Like start with gameplay that matches the models and the narrative, then figure out how to balance it afterwards. That's how they should be doing this. This is something I rant about all the time.
I think they won't. I think that's why they've decided that all our paladins will come in squads of 3, because they've decided that the upper health limit of a singular Stormcast infantry unit is 10. Like that's just a decision they've made internally. That's why you don't see like retributors anymore, or like decimators or whatever. The evocators, when evocators come back, I guarantee you there will be a 9-win unit. I can practically guarantee you this.
I'm fine with that. Let me be clear. I'm fine with them being 3 models. I think it's cool to have 5 model squads and 3 model squads. And the 3 model squads are the big hitters, the more elite version, special assignments, like Praetors, Questors are like a reinforced unit. I think it's a cool mix to have stuff that's at 5 and 3, right? And then with cavalry, 3s and 2s. Like Dracoths, if they had the right stats, would feel really, really cool compared to a 3 model unit, right? It's just not enough health. Like, we're supposed to be an army that takes hits, but we're never capable of taking hits. We have all this healing and all this stuff built in, but it never ends up actually being our identity because we get wiped out before we have a chance to heal. And they keep giving us 5-up boards that we have to jump through all these hoops to get. And that's like, when we have 5-up boards, we feel tough, right? If our 10 health units felt like 15 health units, like that's what a 5-up board is, the 50% increase, that's the right amount. So if the answer is we don't have wards anymore, yes, I'll take that. I would rather have just more health to start with than to have a 5-up board. Cuts down on the dice rolling too.
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I will agree with that too. Like, just give us more health and don't give us any wards. Like, make mortal wounds like our mortal weakness.
Yeah.
Like, we just die to mortal wounds. That's just how Stormcast is.
Sure. Yeah, we die to mortal wounds. Okay, but it takes a lot of them. That's
Yep.
fine. Like, you got to pour a lot of mortal wounds in to kill a reinforced unit of liberators.
I'd be okay
It's
with
fine.
losing ward saves in this army if we just got more health. Yeah.
And if like finest hour could be usable in the enemy turn, we turn into like the armor army, like we should be. I'm fine with that. Another issue I have with our stats, Rend 1 is way too prevalent. The amount of like other armies can much more easily hit Rend 2 and Rend 3. Stormcast have very few units that are Rend 2. We've got Grand Hammers, Dracoths, like mounts, basically. Storm Drakes and Dracoths. Monsters?
And heroes. Monster heroes.
Yeah. That's it. Like, why does a Liberator have the same Rend as a Retributor, as a Reclusian? Our elite dudes should have Rend 2. Our heroes, a lot more of them should have Rend 2. Like, a Lord Celestin should not be hitting you with Rend 1. This is like demigod apex fighter with a weapon of legend. And it's Rend 1. Like, what? Oh my god.
A troll with a stick is Rend 2, damage 3, for reference.
Yeah,
Galmaraz.
damage 3.
He's hitting you with Galmaraz. It's dirty troll Galmaraz. Yeah, these things need to be. I really want this to be a focus for them for 5th edition for Stormcast. Is like fix the baseline stats, then figure out how to balance the army afterwards. Because I'm really just sick of Liberators hitting 90 points by the end of the edition, and the only reason they're seeing play is because they're the cheapest screen, and like it's not heroic. And Stormcast need to be heroic. So, okay. What else do we want to talk about with Stormcast Battletome? We get it all out of our system? Anything else? Power creep, right? We can have a discussion on that, and I think we can close out the stream with it. Power creep is a topic we talk about a lot on the channel. It's something we, Ragonk, if you remember, on our Battletome review for 3rd edition, our first video on the channel, we said power creep is going to be an issue because this army is just stats. It doesn't have very interesting mechanics. And as other armies come out and they are more powerful, because we came from 2nd edition, which every book was just insane power creep after the next one. And we were expecting that to happen in 3rd edition. And it didn't pan out the way we thought it would. I mean, it did and it didn't. In one hand, we did get the power creep that we thought was going to happen, right? Like starting with like Lumineth into Gits, into Ogres, Caradron.
Second half.
Yeah,
the second half of the edition.
The last year of the game.
Yeah, we called it the 2023 Battletomes. Like the power creep happened all of that year, the last like 10 books. That did happen. We knew that would happen because like there's lots of reasons for it. Power creep is fun. Frankly, it is fun to be excited about things. It's fun to get things to shake up. You don't want to just release equal power armies constantly. Like a little bit of power creep is needed. And what we thought was going to happen with the 3rd edition Battletome for Stormcast is that it just wouldn't compete. It ended up being still quite competitive by the end of the edition because we had really good stats. Dracoths were just punching way above their weight. 2 Fulminators on the charge hit harder than sometimes reinforced units and double reinforced units in other armies. You know, it was crazy how hard Fulminators hit. And we had all these tools available to us that even though we had terrible enhancements, we had a lot of unique stuff like Grand Hammers, we had Meteors, we had a good spell lore, or endless spells, I should say, with the Comet. We had tricks and we had good stats. And even though other armies got way more interesting mechanics and comparable stats, we still kept up and were a competitive army. I don't get that same impression this time around. I think our tricks have gotten better, right? Like Heaven Sent is cool, Starfall is cool, the Portal is cool, not Reclusians. And I think Reclusians might scale pretty well. Like 3-up ignore stuff is pretty cool. Like we've got some things, but the stats are way worse. And I think we could see the inverse happening here, where before our stats kept us relevant, I think our tricks might keep us relevant, but I don't know. I'm worried. I'm worried that this Battletome...
We'll just turn into a horde army eventually, or it's something resembling.
I really don't want to. I don't want Stormcast to flood the table with bodies, you know?
Well, it's like there's some stuff that's like what it'll mean is like we will always have. So okay, I will say this: save stacking being gone means Rend 1 is more impactful than it's ever been. So let's not. I'm not gonna say Rend 1 is completely useless. It'll feel useless against like Varangard, sure, but against a lot of stuff now it feels okay.
Yeah.
What I'm worried will happen is, yeah, they'll just keep giving us 100 points, 200 points back in our list to compensate, but it's not going to solve the fundamental problem, which is like some units just don't feel that elite. So we will be sort of like pigeonholed into running like a handful of units that feel like Stormcast. Last edition, this was like Fulminators, Evocators on Cats, Annihilators, Night Vexillor with the Comet banners. You know, we weren't really running Vanquishers and Vindictors, and nobody was like, maybe like 1 or 2 people were trying Stormkeep, but like not even then. They didn't feel elite. They just sat on circles. That's not going to happen this edition, I feel like, because I feel like we're the only book that's designed with the seasonal rules in mind, because they thought about what would happen if they gave us Rend 2, and they decided that it was not good because we would go to Rend 3 using special assignment. So we have been designed with special assignment in mind. Now, are they going to keep this for books that come after the season of special assignment is over? I guess we'll see.
I wonder how relevant all the control and healing stuff in our book will be, because we haven't really talked about that tonight. we have a lot of really,
Agreed.
really, really good tools for control and healing. Vexilor is phenomenal. Staunch Defender is really good. Questers are pretty good. We've got a lot of really good control stuff. It's not relevant right now, though. I thought it would be, because with the smaller objectives, each individual model on the objective becomes more valuable. So if you can just sneak one model on there with a +6 control score, you could flip an objective without having to kill anything, really. I think what's ended
It's not
up
relevant because that same designer decided to write the Vanguard War Scroll right after that.
well, I think it's
That's
not relevant. Ironically, I think it's not relevant because objectives are smaller. People aren't cramming as many bodies on. So like we're not fighting with 40 zombies like we used to
No.
take control of an objective. We're fighting 10. And it's actually pretty easy to kill them rather than actually try to out control them. Like
I would say
Gargants,
the opposite
we
of
just
that
kill
is also
Gargants.
true.
We just kill the Gargants before we have to out control them. It's funny to out control a Gargant, even two. Like I had a game where 2 Gargants were standing on an objective and I had more control score. Like that's hilarious, but it's not really tactically useful. And I think so much power, like so much of the budget of power for Stormcast has been put into those mechanics, and I don't think they're gonna. I don't know if they're gonna scale at all. I don't know how relevant
I
they're
just
gonna be.
no. I think it's relevant. I think because I think the opposite side of that coin is also true. Because the objectives are smaller, a single model or two standing in an objective with control score bonuses is way more impactful than it was
It,
previously. Because you don't have
yes,
that much space to stand on.
but those models still have to survive. And if
Yes,
we're as
that's my
fragile as
problem.
we
Yes.
are, I don't think
Yeah.
it matters.
I think Rob Mulchine put this in our Discord. He was like, I think he said something along the lines of, Stormcast need a mechanic to avoid anti-infantry run. I think the problem is a lot of the control score stuff is designed to be executed with blocks of infantry, and infantry, slow moving 3-up save infantry is no different than slow moving 5-up save infantry, because -2 rend 2 damage, -2 rend 3 damage units just hit you and wipe you off the board,
Yeah.
and you don't survive long enough to control or do anything.
I feel like what we're gonna what I have felt from the very beginning that Finest Hour should work like it did in 3rd edition. We should be able to reactively Finest Hour in our opponent's turn. That would make that mechanic way more interesting. I understand why they didn't give it to us, because I feel like right now it might be too good. But in a year, when we're getting power crept out of the game, then it would matter. Because you're right, we just die.
We
I
charge
wish we
in
had like a
and we power through, and that's how we survive.
yeah. So it's like I wish we had a mechanic that, I can't believe I'm saying this. Sequitors are intensely overpriced, but that ability on their War Scroll is actually fire. The ability to just say at the start of combat, I'm going to ignore all your weapon special effects, ignore all your anti-infantry, ignore crit auto wound, whatever the hell you're trying to do to me, is really, really insane, actually. I wish we had a prayer or a spell that did that.
Yeah.
Or just that was an allegiance ability. Because in the lore, when you read Stormcast novels, they repeatedly talk about the fact that blessed Sigmarite armor can deflect all but the most powerful of attacks.
You're
Like,
telling me Chaos Field doesn't melt Sigmarite beams? Is that what you're telling me? Sure. I'm kidding.
Warp fire doesn't melt Azure beams.
Yeah. No, he's right. There are instances of. I'm just kidding, but it's like, yeah, I just wish we had a way to ignore that. I think anti-infantry really makes blocks of infantry not viable in this army, which is why the most infantry you're seeing is either shooters, Quester, Soulsworn, or like a single unit of Vanquishers. I don't think we're going to see those 10 Vanquisher blocks like people were running when the Index first came out.
We need something to prop these units up. I mean, even if these units are bad, Stormcast is still going to be a good army, though, right? Like we've been very critical of 4th edition and Stormcast Battletome. I have a lot of issues with it, but my issues are more design rather than power, right? Like it's It's about interest. It's about narrative. It's about making the models look and feel like they do what they should be doing. That's my criticism of it. But I think the Battletome has made us stronger as an army. You know, prosecutors are just better.
Yes.
The teleport portal is better than what we had before, which was nothing. Even with small point nerfs to long strikes and Krondus, I think other units that took decreases kind of it's a wash. It doesn't really matter. Maybe those lists that were spamming long strikes, you know who you are. Those are going to take a hit, 40-point hit. Still not the end of the world. I thought we were a top 10 army, and I think the stats kind of baked it out. Not baked it out. The stats portrayed it as well. I think we were starting to see that people were recognizing how strong Stormcast actually is when you build and do it right. I want to say my first prediction from seeing the index, where we're going to be a top 5 army, I think that's going to come true. Maybe not forever, but Nighthaunt and Lumineth took nerfs, and those were our worst matchups. So we're going to get better into them, and we're already doing.
There's
going to
be some big wins coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Karazai in particular is one to watch out for. Everybody has finally realized how good Karazai is.
Yep.
We did not sleep on him. We knew he'd be good. Now with the
I think
changes,
it's more the nerfs to other things than the
priority
buffs to other
target.
things that
Yeah.
nerfs us. Yeah.
priority
like,
target was
changes to
huge
priority
for
target.
Karazai.
Yes.
I think
I
you're
think,
going to
like,
see
the
more
nerfs
Celis
in-
and Prime again, which is
Yes.
hilarious. Love it.
Yeah, the nerfs to priority target and Nighthaunt and Lumineth were exactly what we needed to sort of jump up the ranks. And I think, yeah, we're extremely competitive now. Don't buy any of the new stuff other than Prosecutors and Reclusians, really.
The portal.
You don't have to buy Reclusians. But the new stuff isn't good, but all the old stuff is great.
Skaven Tide is
And
good.
buy the
That's a good
terrain
box.
piece. I think we should.
Oh, yeah.
I think we should recommend
sorry, yes.
terrain piece.
I mean, it's free. There's no reason to not take the terrain piece. Like,
Make your own.
Yeah,
well,
you gotta be careful with it, but for sure, it's good, incredible. I've been playing with just a proxy of it for the last couple of weeks, and it's just like so
Okay.
great to have that.
All right. I gotta go, guys. Bye.
See ya.
Sorry, guys.
No worries. We're closing up soon anyway. Yeah, so I want to leave everybody on the impression that I think Stormcast is going to be strong. I think it's going to be a top 5 army. And I want to hear what Jack has to say, because we butt heads on this all the time.
Yeah.
And it's not like I'm always right. So I want to know your opinion. Where did you think Stormcast were before the book and the point changes? And how much do you think it's going to impact us?
I thought that prior to the book coming out, that we were mediocre.
Okay, so would you say mediocre is like middle of the pack, top half, bottom half? Like what's that mean?
I would say sort of middle of the pack, but towards the bottom half of the middle of the pack, right? So
the bottom half, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like there's what 24 armies in the game, and I kind of felt like overall we were maybe 15th or 16th, right? Like not terrible, and there was definitely a lot of play, but not amazing either. My opinion of Stormcast has steadily gone up as I've gotten more games in with them. I think now, yeah, we're definitely top half. I would say probably top 10.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I'd go for top 5. Definitely top 10. I think
top
that
5 is going to be a meta
strong.
call, but I think
yeah.
I think we're going to be top 10. Definitely.
I think top 5 is also player skill / meta. It's not. Yeah.
I think top 10 is a very good place for an army to be.
Yes.
I mean, obviously, you don't want to be bottom 10, right? Like, but it's like in terms of power, I think we're an A tier army. Like, I think we're gonna have to do a army ranking list at some point. We haven't done one in a while, and kind of explain what we think is like an S tier. S tier armies are busted and need to be nerfed. So A tier is where every army wants to be. Like strong, can 5-0 with a good player, can build fun lists that are powerful but not like anti-fun to play against or overwhelmingly powerful or anything. Like that's an A tier army. And I think that's where we are right now. But we'll see what the power group says.
I agree. I'm very worried about what happens when special assignment goes away and our offensive power pieces go back down to Rend 1. So
Yeah, it's concerning.
yeah,
We just shoot them. We just shoot them with more long strikes.
yeah. Well,
Hurricanes now. Hurricanes are legit.
and hurricanes aren't bad. Yeah, our shooting is good, and I came around to this sort of argument that you and I had a bunch, Paul, about holistic army balancing. I slowly came around to your argument that the Stormcast have to be balanced around the fact that they have very effective shooting. So like our melee hammers can't be directly compared to, say, Slaves to Darkness melee hammers.
Yeah, that's
even
all they
though
have.
it seems like, because that's all they've got, right? They don't have any of those. So yeah,
Narratively, they should be from a game, but in terms of like army
Sure.
design, they can't be.
They can't be, right? So ultimately, yeah, I think we're in a good spot right now. I'm having fun. We're doing well. So I hope that GW puts as much thought into the next GHB as they did into this GHB.
Yeah, I've got big hopes for the General's Handbook. If it's going to be like, maybe not Gallet, but if it's going to be like Andor, if they kept that same team who designed the Andor season, if they have them working on the next General's Handbook, I really am looking forward to it. Because 4th edition is a fantastic foundation. We just need to get off the first floor. We need to keep building, like...
Right.
We're not even first floor.
Right.
We're in the basement. We're putting the struts in and pouring all the concrete still.
Yeah.
Would you guys agree, though, that GW seems a little bit more willing to change actual rules, like war scroll rules, change things faster? It appears to be the case, and I think that's hugely positive for the problems we're talking about that we're worried about happening.
Yeah.
And how certain things can be adapted long term potentially.
Well, I would really like new stats. Like I would very much like stat changes, as well as like rule tweaks are great. Like I said, if you could tweak finest hour to say any hero phase instead of your hero phase, that's an easy fix. You could tweak like numbers here and there, like instead of a 3-up, it's a 2-up. You can make these changes to specific rules, but I think the biggest problem Stormcast have is a like a narrative one, right? Like our units shouldn't be as fragile as they are. They shouldn't have as much Rend 1 as they do. We should feel more elite as an army.
Right. Yeah.
But again, in terms of power, yeah, it's great that we actually have good tricks, and hopefully the control stuff gets relevant. But it's good enough. Let's say that. It's not perfect, it never will be, but it's good enough, and frankly, could have been a lot worse. Oh boy, could it have been a lot worse. If these point changes didn't come, this would have been a much more dour video tonight. But these point changes were very good.
And the FAQ that they magically released out of nowhere.
Oh god, yeah. One more thing to be salty about. Stormstrike Paladors have a 5-up hit on their mounts, and they had to errata it to a 4-up. Like, why was that even a thing that had to exist? Why would it ever be a 5+? Why would a 5+ be on a Stormcast War Scroll anywhere?
I don't know. It seems like it. Well, there's, you know what I mean. That the thing that gets floated around is that there's like they have 2 writers that predominantly write for Age of Sigmar, and one of them really knows the game, and the other one doesn't know it very well.
Well, it's a horse, so it should hit on a 5, right?
But it's not a horse.
It's
no, that's ironically, I think that's what happened. They did not know what the model looked like. They were told to design a Stormcast cavalry unit. This was at the time where they had decided what the base profiles for mounts was going to be. It was going to be 5s and 3s. That's what they had decided. So they did that. And then later on, this unit was designed way early in the edition. They were like, no, there should be better mounts. We should have mounts that hit like normal horses and mounts that hit like better horses. Yeah. All the Stormcast stuff got 4s and 3s, and they never went back to the Paladors to fix it. They gave it the horse profile, basically.
Yeah, I could have even been like an intern, just came in, wrote this up quickly. But, I mean, Sin and Bin are back, right? Like, I don't know where the Bin guy was sleeping for a while, but they're back, and they're working in tandem to, you can see it in 40K too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, my main gripe is like, you're nuking like so much of the model range, the entire Sacrosanct Chamber, so much of the Warrior Chamber. It's like you would think they would give the new units more pizzazz than this. I'm not
Yeah.
talking about power. I'm talking about like oomph. Like
Interesting stuff. Yeah.
yeah, that's all.
All right. I think that's gonna
It's,
do
it's
it for tonight, right? So
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you everybody for coming. Thanks guys for finding time tonight. We will be back to making videos regularly. We're starting with the Battletome review and the Portal video, and then we're going to go into our list building stuff. So look forward to more content on the channel soon.
Yeah. Thanks everybody. We appreciate it. All the YouTube stuff, like and subscribe. Relay us to your friends, and we will have more info about our sponsor coming soon.
Yep, we are. It's in the works. So thank you everybody for tuning in. Mergonk, John, you guys want to say goodnight?
Yeah, thanks so much, guys. See you soon.
Yeah, good night, guys. See you soon.
You guys got anything you want to plug last minute, or like still like normal? No, social media is terrible.
Well,
Like and
guys, have fun
subscribe.
with the army. The army's fun now. The meta's fun now. Go have some fun with some Stormcast.
Yeah, I second that. It's super
Yeah.
fun to play.
Yeah,
Good
the
hopeful
game
message.
is fun now for us. Yeah, it's like I thought it was going to be a very salty string, but it wasn't. There's a lot to be hopeful for, and it's great.
I think
have
we
some
hit the
fun.
right mix of criticism, but keeping it like positive, constructive.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say overall, I have a positive outlook on this book after the recent FAQs. I think there's a lot of fun to be had with this book. I'm looking forward to getting back to the tournament scene.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good time. All right, thanks everybody.